going to be for the Speed Cafe Lobs Esports driver just outside the 29s. I tell you what, he's only 0.3 of a second off the pace. He gets a toe on his next attempt. He's going to be supreme.
Now we start to see these times shuffling a little bit now. Oh, look at Dylan Rudd. Now Ethan Griggold moves to the top of the timesheets now. And this is what we were talking about. These drivers that are in the little bit of a tow now. James Scott, he's got to the top of the sheets. Now this is going to keep changing, but these drivers back here have got that advantage of that little bit of tow and just helping and carrying that speed that they've got on board.
Yep, James Scott to the top. Ethan Griggold hasn't had some great finishes here. I actually don't recall seeing his name inside the top 10 the last couple of years as well, so tonight will be a proving ground. Dylan Rudd, remember we talked about him, needed to tick that box, goes to third. Connor Nixon looks like he might have picked up a touch of grass on the exit of the last corner. 1:43.294, so that's not a valid lap time. I wonder whether or not he picked up an incident point early in the lap and went, oh, I haven't put any heat in the tyres, there's another shot here.
Yeah, possibly. It's one of those catch-22s again, isn't it? It's whether you just rip the Band-Aid off and head to the pit lane and just put on a fresh set and go again. Or like you said, he's probably saved what he's got just so he probably tries and saves himself a little bit of on-track time. But I think personally, depending on how much life he took out of those tyres, it probably would have been ideal to fire back to the lane.
Well, I can tell you, I was talking to a bunch of the Trans-Tasman guys, Madison Down, and Jake Burke. Got to meet them both across the weekend at some production car racing down at Winton Raceway, and they were both with very, very full-on schedules, limited track running tonight, and they said expect it. You won't see us up at the pointy end tonight. I think they're close. They're in and around the back end of the top 10, so they're definitely on the table, but certainly showing it. Was that car off in the grass on the pit lane entry? That's not Borg, is it, potentially? Back end? There was someone down there. There's some weak things in qualifying tonight, Sam, man.
Yeah, well, we've still got another 8.5 minutes too as well. So this is when drivers start to either are pretty happy with their run or they're actually starting to panic because they know that they're slowly running out of time, because it's about a minute 28, 29 if you're on the money around here. And once you sort of start your outlap, we've already seen how slow these outlaps are. Just to go and punch out a lap and then hopefully get back to the lane and have one more crap. They'd like to have another 2 goes at this, but just depending on how it all plays out, they may only get one decent run, providing they don't make any mistakes.
Well, there's time enough on the bank. If we take that first run, they ended up back in the lane with about 5.5 minutes taken out of the clock. So you bugger one up here. There is time for one more attempt.
Yeah.
But you'll have to put some heat in that tyre on the outlap to get that time in, which throws back very similar to Phillip Island. Now Dylan Rudd is at the lead of the chain, and the lap time for him, 28.770. Let's talk about these times. He's 0.007 of a second back from Ethan Griggold in second. Tell you what, Gilliam behind him, 0.003 of a second off of him. That's how tight it is on that second row. And then it's 200ths back to Rick Kuznetsov. There's nothing in it. All of a sudden, James Scott looks supreme. He's got a ton of time. 1/1800 of a second. Heaps of time out in front of the rest of them.
Now look what's happening here on screen. All those Speed Cafe cars have all just got together, and they were touching on before about the fact that Phil Cell would be putting on a banker lap and then find himself just mixed in with a couple of cars for the draft, and that's exactly what he's done now. These guys have just all teamed up. They've got themselves a little bit of fresh air, and they'll be able to work on now just improving on their times. But really good to see that these teammates have all jumped together.
I can tell you, track temp has come down, and we're talking a fraction. It's stayed very, very consistent throughout this entire session. So I think these guys are looking at each other, and James has gone, yep, I've got a really, really good time on the board. I'm comfortable with this one. What can I do for you boys? And it's now become a team game, like exactly like you've said. So James Scott will lead us back around to have another crack at a qualifying attempt. It's going to be Phil Cell second in the queue. Then it's Rudd, then it's Rosella. Luke Rosella's got a job to do here tonight as well. Hasn't finished a race yet this season. 2 blown engines from 2 attempts. Well, first off, he's got to get a good qualifying lap together. Currently sits 15th. And Jared Philcell just in front of him in 12th. So they haven't set their best times thus far throughout the session. It's now coming to crunch time. The end of qualifying for 275 kilometres of the Red Rull Ring. Who's got time? Who's got pace? Who is going to stand on that loud pedal exactly the right amount? Who's going to make the lap count? It's time to really put that good lap in.
I like what I see in here, the gap between Phil Sell and James Scott, because James has already got a time on the board. So he knows that his lap is still pretty good. So he's in a position where he's just towing along Jared. And if he finds himself where Jared gets a little bit too close and maybe feels like he might be holding him up, he will probably dart out of the way. But it looks like they've got themselves a nice little spread. It's enough where Jared's just making up that gain with the lap time as far as the aero, but he's not being held up in any way as far as have the car in front of him as a distraction. So it looks like it's actually working it all a little bit wide there close to the gravel. That might have hurt his exit speed there, but hopefully he can improve here as the lap finishes.
I tell you what, I tell you who's looking really good on this lap's actually Dylan Rudd. He's closer to Phil Sell than they were at the start of the lap. Phil Sell and Scott are both in. They're going to bail out of the way. They're not going to get that lap in. What has Dylan Rudd got as he comes to the final corner? Is he going to be able to get something out of this? Is this going to be a good lap on the board? Does he improve? No, it doesn't look like it's going to be improved. What's the time from Luke Rosella? Doesn't count. Rosella's time didn't count as well, so he's going to stay where he is. Anderson improves. That'll slot Dylan O'Shea a couple spots further back. There's a ton of them diving to the lane because there will only one more attempt, and they need to get to the lane now to set that up.
Smart heads up driving by those drivers. They'd obviously looked at the time and saw that they weren't really making any gains. So the best thing they could do is just fire straight into pit lane, scratch that lap because it wasn't going to do anything for them, put on those new tyres, and then they can just pace themselves on this out lap.
Something's happened to Dylan O'Shea. I think this is the pit lane entry as we go to the OG gear replay for the second time this evening and for the second time of the series.
Oh, massive hit. Was that Burton that was involved in? Didn't quite see. Wow. So that's what you said. You said you saw something happen in the back of the field there, but how lucky was he that he's this close to the pit lane and actually doesn't have to carry that damage and actually can have another crack at it? Man, that was heart and mouth stuff.
Tell you what, it felt like sitting in Sydney traffic looking backwards at everyone coming on and they're coming at you in your lane and you're just forced to sit there and go, I don't know where I'm going here, boys, but I'll just park it off.
We got the onboard OG gear replay. This is what Burton would have seen. Oh, I just caught the tyre barrier. That's what spat him out. So he got sideways on the grass, but the rear just clipped that tyre barrier, spat him round. Whew. And Burton's like, thank goodness I got through that. In the box, fresh car, ready to go again.
Right, there's a bunch of cars that are now starting to trundle around towards the tail end of the lap. Tell you what, what's the tail end of the field, though? I'm looking through the field. Thomas Freeman and Sebastian Flock are the only two drivers yet to set a lap time. You would not want to wait this long. Flock has just entered the lane. So Sebastian Flock, with 3 minutes on the clock, he's got time. He's got time just to get back out there and get a lap in. Freeman's not out. Freeman's done. Freeman's qualifying session will be over. He is going to start from the tail end of the field for the 9.5 Simsport driver. What has Brian Borg got, though, for us? Is he coming to the tail end of a lap? No, he's coming back to the pit lane. So I would say there might be time. Now there's another one pushing deep on the pit lane entry. So they're all taking it deep into the pit lane here. A lot of risk taken right there. I don't think you'll see that level of risk in the race.
Yeah, they can probably get away with just being a little bit more greedy in practice and qualifying. But yeah, obviously you've got to be careful in the race. The last thing you want is damage and having your race ended prematurely in the pit lane. But we can see that now the car's on track, 2 minutes 20 to go. This will be their last crack at it now because pretty much the time is ticking away and a lot of drivers still a little bit further down the field than we would expect. Look at Jared Philsell back in 13th still.
Yeah, that's out of sequence for Phil Sell, and he was one of the drivers. He's been on the podium both times here as well. First and second are his two results. Finished in 2022. He finished second to Brody Kostecki in the Logitech Pro Invitational. In 2023, race win from the Red Rull Ring was his, so he needs to back that up. Remember what we said, though, earlier in the piece? This is probably one of those tracks you can have a semi-off-qualifying performance and still go okay. We'll need to be supported a little bit by safety cars throughout the duration. Oh, there's cars diving through that queue, by the way. They're all starting to get greedy as they recognise time is running out. We've got 90 seconds or so left in qualifying, so there is enough time for another lap here. And Luke Rosella wanted to be up and wanted to be with his teammates. They're all coming to the final corner. It's about drive off the corner. It's about kick-starting the lap the best way you can. James Scott will be the first driver to qualify at start-finish line and finish his qualifying session. For everyone else, this will be their final lap. Everyone on to start things as it currently stand. And who is going to be on pole position at the end of this lap. It's currently going to be James Scott as his teammate Phil Sell got something from it. Tell you what, Phil Sell's a long, long way back. He's not receiving all that much draft. He might have killed the lap at the turn 1 curbing, and now he's got to tow Rosella around.
Yeah, pressure's on it for a lot of these drivers, isn't it? It's something that it's a bit of an abnormal thing to see some of these people struggling so late in the session too. You think you've got plenty of time up your sleeve, but it's always in those dying minutes when you start to put pressure on yourself. But you're right, Jared is a lot far up there. He's going to bail out of this lap because he knew he was holding up his teammate. So Jared won't improve on that 13th position.
Yeah, he's going to start. That's the highest he'll start from. There's going to be drivers improving here. There's going to be drivers improving. Track temperature has again stayed the same, so we're relatively okay. Air temps come up, and I'm talking a fraction. It's come up at 10th. 0.1 of a degree. Sorry, talking tenths when we talk in terms of lap time, not in terms of temperature. It's come up 0.1 of a degree in terms of things. That's just the air temperature. Track temperature stabilised. That means there's not much on the improve. Who is going to be able to stick a time in very, very late in this session? James Scott's on the run to the line. He'll have no tow. Don't expect him to improve. What's it going to be for all the drivers who are in behind him? It's then going to be teammates Luke Rosella followed by Dylan Rudd. Dylan O'Shea sits 4th in the queue. Has an opportunity to improve here. Currently sits out at 12th position. Doesn't get a tow to the line as Rudd bails out of the way. And Dylan O'Shea doesn't improve. Somebody else has just jumped up in front of him. Warboys has jumped up, so that's going to shuffle Phil Sell back as well as they all dive in. Briggs has improved. There's a number of drivers on the improve. Madison down. What's he got as he comes to the start-finish line? What's left in the tank for Madison with the number 1 on the windshield banner? He's going to improve. It's to 6, so it is an improvement for Madison down. But what are the rest of the field going to come through? Griffin Gardner, late on in the piece, was looking out from about 20th, dives way up the field. Bo Albert, his best qualifying performance in the season this time is going to be 10th position. And there's only one more car out on track. That is not going to be a valid lap time. Qualifying's done. There's no one on a lap. That is how they'll end.
Well, you talked about how the highest that Phil Sell was going to finish in that. I think he ended up 17th after all that. So a really big mix-up of drivers, but what a qualifying session. Isn't it amazing how it always comes down to that last minute where these drivers put themselves in that pressure cooker situation and you've either got to perform or you've got to get out of the way. And unfortunately, sometimes it just bites a few of these drivers in the backside.
Well, the drivers that stood on top of the pile, it was Ethan Griegold who threw down a really, really good lap early on in the session. Could not better it right the way through. It was his second qualifying lap. That was good enough for P2. But James Scott takes another pole position for the Logitech Pro Invitational. 28.581. Guess what? So close to 2/10. That's how much he had on the competition. Was never going to improve on that late in the session. Didn't need to. Tried to offer his teammates some help. That's a big, big marker from James Scott. And I saw him in this car at this venue on Tuesday night. He took a win then, and he looks very, very strong. I thought it might have been his teammate that might have been the better driver here tonight. James Scott proves me wrong.
It's a stroke of confidence too, was when you have a race here and you've already got sort of a checkered flag under your belt. So he's come in, he's hit the ground running, he's got himself on the P1 position. That's a feather in his cap for the start of this race.
Yeah, and they've all just started filing back in. Dylan Rudd, though, remember what we're talking about? Probably best place to try and go after a championship. How is this in terms of confidence and in terms of a mark for him? There is 0.003 of a second separating the two drivers on row number 2. Dylan Rudd gets in there. Could he be potentially the championship leader when we leave here tonight? The other driver that's trying to take him down, Rick Kuznetsov. These two are locked in lockstep in terms of the championship points. They were on the 200ths of a second further apart. That sets him on row number 5 off alongside of Madison down. There was 200ths of a second in terms of that row in terms of the qualifying performances. Marcelo Rivera is going to start off of the inside of row number 4 off alongside of Brady Myers. Myers will be looking for a really strong finish, and unfortunately it was a penalty late in the piece from Phillip Island that prevented him from being on the podium. Jake Maloney is going to round out your top 10 in P number 9 off alongside of Bo Albert, and Bo will be cheering. He needed that boost of confidence. He got it here at the Red Bull Ring.
How great is it when you see a mix-up of these teams and drivers that you just don't know how the race is going to play out? It makes it brilliant from a spectator's point of view or even a commentator's point of view because you just don't know how it's going to play out. Griffin Gardner in P11, Josh Anderson rounding out your 12. I love that there is just that mix of drivers and teams because this is going to be an absolute cracker of 64 laps.
and it's going to be Blake Warboys in P13. Maybe it's unlucky 13th, maybe not. 1,000th of a second between Warboys and Adam Briggs. That's how tight it was as we're on the 7th row of the grid. Row number 8, Wayne Burke to the inside. 2 Synergy Sim Racing teams in 14th, Synergy Sim Racing cars, 14th and 15th. Dylan O'Shea said, look, there's probably something on the table for him tonight. Starts out of 16th. Jared Philsell off alongside of Rook Rosella. There's 2 Lobs Esports cars right up at the front end of the field. There's 2 cars way deeper in the field. Philsell wouldn't have expected that. Zach Rat, Trey White's been strong on confidence quite a lot lately. Not so in terms of the qualifying performances. He'll start off alongside of Tom Freer. Freer has been phenomenal at this track in the last couple of years. Expect to see him climb throughout the field. Forza Nil Nabi, Synergy Sim Racing cars. Well, there's a whole bunch of them right around this 20th placed position. Forza Nil Nabi will start out at 21st. And Jordan Ross, well, he's been on the podium. He was on the podium last year. Going to be a big drive to better that this year. Jake Burton said he hadn't had a lot of practice, said he was likely to struggle here tonight. Struggle he did in terms of qualifying off of 23rd, off alongside of Sean McNamara, the big boss out of 9.5 SimSport. He'll be looking for a reasonable night at the office. Robbie Gribbs, championship leader. Check this out. 25th in the standings. We'll start off alongside of teammate Matty Bowler. And Bowler's put a little bit more time in the sim of late, and the results, they were improving. I don't know how confident he'll be in that qualifying performance. Brenton Hobson for Synergy Sim Racing inside of 27th, and Hayden Veld off alongside of him. Veldy had a very, very strong start of the season back at Sebring. Ian Ford next to the ERT cars off of 29th. Rounding out your top 30, Jacob O'Reilly. I don't think he'll be 100% confident with that one, seeing teammates further up the field. Kurt Stenberg out of 31st off alongside a teammate Richard Hamstead. These two drove their way through the field just about every single race, don't we see, at Sandman from the TTR boys. They like driving alongside of each other, work very well together. Andre Yusuf out of 33rd off alongside of Connor Nixon in 34th as we get to the 17th row of the grid. 18th row of the grid a little bit further down, we're going to throw to Teo Serrano out of Vermilion Sim Sports off alongside of Scotty Gamble in the Anzac colours for the WKMP Sim Sports. Damian Johnson in 37th, and Michael Whiting, the only Fishy Motorsports entry that made it into the field this time. Brady Baldwin will be a little bit happier with his qualifying performance this time, put a lap on the board. Brian Bourke struggled in qualifying, be a difficult one to start that deep in the field. We'll throw it over from here to Thomas Freeman and Sebastian Flock. Both of them failed to set a lap, the last 2 cars on the grid. And now, time for the grid walks here, Sandman. We're going to start it off with our pole position winner. It's going to be the driver of the 088. It's another pole position. It's another mark of confidence tonight. The Speed Cafe Lobs esports machine in white and green. She looks pretty. She's on the front row once more. How you feeling there, James? It's another good qualifying performance here for you. We noted there was a lot of help for your teammates throughout the tail end. You were very, very confident that that 28.5 was going to be good enough for pole.
Yeah, pretty much summed it up pretty well. Obviously got a good lap in there. I think it was my second run. So yeah, try to help the other guys out, where we could. I think Jared had a bit of a lock up on his last run, which was unfortunate. But yeah, the race pace looks really good, so I'm sure he'll be able to make his way through.
In terms of things here tonight, obviously leading sometimes here at the Red Bull Ring, incredibly punishing, such a long period of on throttle time around this lap and 100% throttle position. Is there going to be some games played in terms of the draft? You do want that track position as much as you can get it?
I don't really know, to be honest. I don't really sort of think about those things. It can all go sort of not the way you think, just with a bad start. So sort of just get to the first corner, get out, get up to the hairpin, and then probably just see where we are once we get onto the back straight between turn 2 and 3, and then sort of work it out. Yeah, obviously the draft's almost Monza spec around here, we'll just see how it goes. That's all.
Mate, confidence levels, they're supremely high. Like you said, got the lap out of the way very, very early. You sound relaxed. You just sound very, very chilled out. Just another night at the office, boys. We got this one under control at the moment. Is that been the way the season's gone thus far? Because you've delivered some very good performances. Yeah,
pretty much. We've had the speed for most of the rounds this year. Obviously got unlucky at the first round, just racing hard and that, but just see what we can do. Obviously the first part was qualifying well, but still a long 64 laps, so see where we end up.
All right, head down, mate. Good luck. And I know Sandman's sitting off alongside of the guy on P number 2 to James's outside.
That's right. Just having a chat with Ethan Greg Galt, lining up on the front row, mate. You'd be pretty happy with it. Absolutely nothing in it, but good to see the Logitech G Commodore on the front row.
Yeah, it's the first time I think I've been in an interview here, so that's a surprise for a while. But yeah, no, we've had pace in the car all week. The set's pretty much unchanged from last year, and we were competitive here then. So I was hoping that we're going to be near up the front. But you never know with this series how competitive qualifying is. So no, just happy to be somewhere near the front, especially after the last couple of rounds.
Well, I was looking at your times in practice, and I was like, I hope this carries over for him. And to be that close to pole position, mate, you'd be absolutely stoked. So confidence was pretty good coming into this weekend.
Yeah, look, I'm pretty happy with the consistency. Like I did 3 laps in qualifying that would have put me P2 anyway. So normally I'm not that good. So it's looking pretty good this weekend. But obviously, it's a very long race, and some stuff can go on in the race. Yeah, we'll just see how we end up at the end of it all.
Now, obviously, any racetrack that you qualify well in, you're going to have a little bit of a love affair with it. Your thoughts coming into this weekend Red Bull Ring? Has it always been sort of high on the cards as a track that you enjoy?
Yeah, I never really thought of it too much until I started getting results here, and every single car that I drive here I seem to go well at, so I quite enjoy it now. So yeah, no, it's definitely one of the best ones on the calendar. I'm just trying to find the issues with some of the other tracks and see if we can get to the front more often than just the occasional one-off track. So.
And no doubt, without giving away too much, because we don't want anyone to listen on how your strategy is going to go, but how you feeling for race pace? You reckon you got yourself sorted for tonight? 64 laps, decent distance around here?
Well, the setup's the exact same as last year, and we had good race pace in that race, so I assume this is going to be no different. Qualifying's pretty much been no different, so I'm hoping it's going to be pretty good.
Terrific, mate. We'll let you get ready. Front row of the grid, congratulations, mate. Hopefully we're talking to you at the end of the night.
Cheers, boys.
There you go, Scotty. Ethan Grigolk on the front row of the grid. Look at that view that he's got heading into turn 1. Pretty special.
Yeah, special. I tell you what, I don't like being pinched against that pit wall. I get very claustrophobic when you're on the inside on the run down to turn number 1. He's going to have to open it up. And the other key is, have a look at the 2 cars that are in behind him. Look at Gilliam's run. He's going to be chomping at the bit to get to the right-hand side of that number 7 car and have a right royal crack. Ladies and gents, for about under 90 seconds now until lights out from the Red Bull Ring. And qualifying's in the books. Let us know who your picks are for the race. We've got 275 kilometers. I tell you, the fuel drop is about 224 liters you'll use across the course of the race at about 113 liters. Anything you can save around here is going to be gold. That's the field. Look at how far back they go, though, Sandman. They are very, very deep in terms of where they sit on the field. It's a long, long run to turn 1. Got to survive turn 1, lap 1.
Absolutely. Like you said, into turn 1, and even the long run into the second turn. Just, you've got that long straightaway. People are going to be trying to get whatever toe they can, and there's going to be a couple of people that are frustrated with their qualifying session. They know they didn't get the best out of that. They know they're going to have to race to the front. More importantly, they've got to keep that car clean.
Yeah, and turn 3, there's a kink at turn 2. I don't know if you call it turn 2. It's always up for debate whenever you come here. What is turn 2? What is turn 3? But it's 4 wide. You can get through the entry to turn 3 at the top of the hill, 4 wide. The exit, though, 2 to 3 wide at best. It's absolutely not 4 wide out the other side. So they've got to sort that out somehow. Lap 1, turn 1 tends to be a little bit of a car parking lot. Everyone's crawling around there. Well, we are just moments away, ladies and gentlemen. Who's your picks for race number 3? Who leads the championship on the other side of this one? 275 kilometers, V8 supercars. The revs, they start to rise. They're going to start to roll here in just a few moments. I thought Kuznetsov might have already got rolling. I think it was him that plucked a gear and started to crawl. They get the start. 111 litres worth of fuel on board. They're big, they're heavy, they're V8 supercars. James Scott leads us into turn 1. Gilliam gets to the inside of Dylan Rudd. He is going to try and sneak third spot away, just about gets it. How good's the run, though? Ethan Grigolt's right up there. There's action back in the deep in the pack. Look at them already 3 wide as they get round the exit of turn number 1. Contact, there always is. It's such a choke point. But lap 1's underway, and Dylan Rudd's going to have to fire back down to the inside, and Gilliam doesn't quite get far enough up. Who's got space on the outside? Rivera was looking for a hole. It didn't open up. Someone's gone around. It's a familiar Sim Sports car as well. It might have been Jacob O'Reilly. That's right.
Another one.
It was, and someone joins him.
It's a parking lot down there. It was one of these Speed Cafe cars that looks like it drilled into the side of him. So without looking at another replay, I think that'd probably be a penalty. He got in there a little bit too hot. I don't know who the driver was, but unfortunately made contact, turned the driver around, and unfortunately it's turned into a little bit of a parking lot. But everyone was just nose to tail, trying to make the most of that braking zone, not trying to get in there too hot. Unfortunately, a couple of people didn't survive.
Yeah, Damien Johnson, Zach Rattray White, the two cars that got turned around, and not gone well for them. I tell you what, Brady Baldwin's lost spots in the back end of the field. There's still two wide. Somebody didn't pick it up. I think it might be Hayden Veld is all out of shape as they come through. He's sideways, makes contact, by the way, deep in the pack with Stenberg. They both go scrambling for track position as they lose a ton of spots. There's going to be two wide as they run down here into the second last corner, turn 9. Somebody up ahead of them. I think it might have been Ford. It might have been Connor Nixon. Someone pinched a brake just up ahead as well. And a big old luck up on the run down to turn 9. They're banging wheels. They're banging doors at turn 10. Boys, there's still 270 Ks to go. And it's going to be Ian Ford and Kurt Stenberg who have already come to blows.
Absolutely giving each other just enough room to get through there side by side. They're trying to be a little bit of give and take into turn number 1, but it looked like maybe someone might have had a slowdown penalty because it looked like there was a little bit of a checkup. Everyone tried to give each other space, but managed to get through there safe and sound. Thankfully, like you said, lap number 1, hold your breath.
Hold your breath. We're going to be holding it for 270 more kilometres. I think someone better get the ambulance on standby because I'm going to be out of oxygen in no time at all. The OG Gamer replay, the first one of the race for season 2024. They check up. That's O'Shea getting in there. It was a Lobbs car. It was Rosella that bowled it deep down the inside, and they just all kind of tripped over Rattray White, and then Johnston just gets assisted in there as well.
OG Gear replay showing us all the action. We could see it all unfold. So the stewards are already going to be already up in arms at the moment. They've already got their work cut out for them on lap number 1. But now the rest of the field just needs to knuckle down now. It's a long way to play out. You don't know what's going to happen throughout the race, whether we're going to get safety cars or what's going to happen throughout the night. You can't worry about the drama that's already unfolded. It's all about just putting eyes forward and just making the most of it.
Well, now as we start to settle into racing as normal, I'll stick the air quotes up there straight away because is there anything ever normal? It's time to start considering who did lap 1 very, very right. I can tell you, Richard Hampstead, 32nd on the grid, currently sits 24, so he's done a very, very good job, as is Teo Sorono. Sebastian Flock didn't set a qualifying time, gained 7 spots. Phil Selt, we said he was out of sequence, he said he didn't get that lap together, he's also on the move. Remember Sebring? Remember when he overtook all of those cars? Oh yeah, then he ended up right where the scene of the accident was. My word, it's going to be a long night, Sandman. Going to be a long night.
Absolutely. Isn't it funny we talk about these movers and shakers? Seems to be every week that how sick of it would you be? I mean, obviously you're making the most of it and making up those positions, but wouldn't it be nice for these drivers sometimes just to start up front and stay up front? But picking your way through the field, I guess it certainly builds a bit of character for these guys.
Good first lap as well from Marcelo Rivera. Started at 7th spot, moved his way up to 5th. That gives him an interesting opportunity. They're not trying to really gap the field out in front. I think there's going to be a little bit of a squabble go on here in a few moments between Dylan Rudd. Rudd can see the cars ahead of him starting to skip clear. And in fact, I think Greek Galt's already broken the draft to Gilliam. So Gilliam's qualifying pace not translating to a great race pace car. And he's seeming to struggle a little bit. Might be saving some tyre, might be saving a little bit of fuel. Either way, there's no one punching that hole in the air for him anymore. And Dylan Rudd senses vulnerability.
Yeah, and how crucial is that? We talk about that all side by side through here. Having to give up a little bit of real estate now. Brenton Hobson just trying to hold off this pack. But it's interesting, isn't it? Everyone tries to utilise as much as that draft you can. The earlier you can do it in this race, the better it's going to help towards the end of the race.
Side by side of the last corner is always risky. Road runs out very, very quickly on the left-hand side of the screen. Sebastian Flock now gets the nose to the inside of Connor Nixon to his outside. Now he's going to get a little bit of tow as Hayden Veld offers some assistance on the run down to turn number 1. Course ERT teammates working together. He will pull that pass off to Seb Flock. Wiggle on the curve though. Might be not the same way when they get out of here, and indeed Connor Nixon's already pulled back alongside. Got to get a good exit off of turn 1. This is turn 2 as they run up the hill here, and now it's the braking zone at turn 3 at the top of the hill. Still trying to go after Seb Flock, nearly ends up in the back end of him. To the inside though, Andre Yusuf trying to hang there. Doesn't quite get the opportunity to do so, and Connor Nixon will finally slot back in line. And the first penalty of the night, Luke Rosella. He's not finished 2 races thus far this season. Now he's going to have a drive-through in the 3rd.
Let's go check out the OG Gear replay. This is where looking at Rivera. Making a dive here. Oh, nice and clean. You can see the brakes. Look at the brakes. Red hot glowing already. Nice move there up the inside. Gets the job done and it's eyes forward. But good to see these drivers still giving each other a little bit of give and take. So easy to nail some of these drivers and push them wide. And the last thing you want to do is ruin your race. We're only 4 laps in, for this 64-lap race. Oh, now I say that. Little bit of contact there. Side by side, door handle. And the side of that SimSpeed Cafe Commodore is all buffed up.
Well, Luke Brisella's got a drive-through penalty that he's going to have to serve, and I think he got a slowdown penalty out of that. Yeah, he does. He's going to dive out of the queue, try and get that one served, and try and find someone to get back in here. Now he's going to be the inside of Jake Burton. Burton will just barely clear it. They're 3 wide on the exit of turn 1, just ahead. It's Hampstead, it's McNamara, and it's going to be Matthew Bowler. They managed to sort it out. Still going to be 2 of the inside, though. This is Sean McNamara who's going to have a crack when they get up here to turn number 3. That's Bowler looking backwards. That's the on-board down from him, and here comes Hampstead down the inside. They're 3 wide. Oh, tangle, and they tangle behind. Oh.
Massive carnage. It was hammer time. He put it up the inside, made the move. There wasn't enough room where everyone else tried to fit through. A little bit of contact. Hammer managed to squeeze through. Got through it without any contact, but unfortunately it was a bit of a ripple effect and a couple other cars got turned around.
Yeah, and it was contact from Sean McNamara to the right rear corner of Matthew Bowler's car, and Bonnet's gone missing. Well, he's got to cool the engine somehow, I suppose. It'll be a cooler engine now, but it's not going to be aerodynamically very efficient.
Ooh, Hammer will be holding his breath now thinking, I dodged a bullet there. Thankfully, he made that move at the right time and managed to miss all that carnage. Well done.
My word. They're squabbling over track position like you would not believe as they all get through it. This pack right here, it's in about that 30th to 35th spot. They are just squabbling like it's the final lap of the race already. Boys, we are 5 laps into this one.
Yeah.
I thought we were going to settle down. They have not at all. There's still 2 wide on the run of the final corner. Ian Ford gets a whack in the rear from Andre Youssef, although it's maybe a little bit of a bump drafting opportunity. Ford gets a shove down the start-finish line, but the draft's on the left-hand side of the track. Here comes Connor Nixon, got a huge exit off there. Ford tries to slot back in single file. Not quite going to happen. Andre Youssef to the outside, looking for a little bit of drive. Too deep into turn 1. That's not going to assist his drive out the exit of the corner, and now it's going to be Ford who tries to get clear of that race car. Brady Baldwin's in behind and looking for a little bit of a draft. Synergy Sim Racing cars, remember I said they were strong. Baldwin's cutting his way through the field nicely on the run down to turn number 3. Oh, take a breath, settle it.
Mate, I don't know, if I was the teams here, I'd be getting in the driver's ears just to get these guys just to calm down. I'm actually a little bit surprised of how aggressive it is. I was talking it up just before about how I thought everyone was taking it easy, but just the last lap or 2, everyone fired up.
There's more contact. So this replay will show what's going on for that penalty. And there's Hammer gets down the inside. And then it was contact in the background as well. Was that Burton? I think it might have been Burton that got tagged and spun and straightened back out all over again. But those rear tyres will be incredibly hot. And then I think this is the live picture we might have just crossed back to. And I thought I saw triple one gets a punching on into Seb Flock. So that was Teo Sorono making contact with Seb Flock and getting him all out of shape.
We're always excited to have new sponsors like OG, but man, have they got their money's worth so far. We have been throwing replays left, right and centre here at the moment. It's been incredible for these opening laps. But like I was saying before, I really think the team managers needs to be getting in these guys' ears and just saying, hey, I think we need to calm it down a little bit. There's such a long way to go. And look at the leaders. They're just yapping everyone because everyone, a little bit further down in the pack, are all tripping over each other.
Yeah, and now it's going to be time to try and settle themselves down on it and start to target things. I'm not seeing a whole bunch of fuel saving. Remember when we talked about, it's got the highest percentage of throttle, on throttle time right throughout the lap? So no one really saving. And the other thing I'd be thinking about in the back of my mind, Sandman, is there's going to be 2 long stints on the tyres and loaded stints, higher average speeds, right? More force going through that tyre. Surely someone somewhere is just thinking, I'm just going to maybe stay on the madness a little bit, hang on to some tyre. That's going to come to me later in the race.
I was almost, at the start of this race, going to comment that I expected it to be really slow and everyone just sort of saving, maybe get to about the halfway mark and then start to really give it some. But I guess these guys are just, maybe are they fretting a little bit that they don't want everyone to get away from them? We talked about how crucial it is to have the draft round here, but it's not a game changer where it'll take you out of the race altogether because it's such a long way to go. So I did kind of expect it to be quite easy at the start, but it's been more aggressive than what I expected.
We'll have a look at the times up the top end of town, by the way. James Scott and Ethan Greco half a second apart. 3 seconds. Have a look at that gap that's broken in the chain, and then there's just a monster train that files in behind them as well. And you know why that's all come about? That's come about because Andrew Gilliam on lap 1 dived it down in there. The front two sort of single filed out. Greek Gold went, yeah, I'm not getting Scott, just followed him. Just made sure he made up time. Third and fourth squabbled over it for that entirety of that first lap, so already a long way back. Gilliam made one mistake out of the draft, and now it's starting to settle down. Dylan Rudd pounced very, very quickly thereafter. We saw Rivera and that overtake as well, and then everyone else is just like, okay, that's how it is. All right, we'll just follow. Rudd's punching that hole. He is in a big, big fuel hole. He's got to break these guys somehow.
Yeah, we'll see a little bit of action here. It looks like Brady was nearly got the move done up the inside there, but these two are going to fight it out a little bit between him and Rick Kuznetsov. And that's what I was seeing with James Scott and Ethan Grigol. Ethan, no doubt, is quite happy just to sit there and let James punch that hole in the air. He's like, you know what? He can do all the hard work. I'll just tack onto the back of him, let this race play out, and we'll start thinking about any pit stops a little bit later on.
Yep, so everyone's starting to settle down. We got through 8 laps, and then everyone went, you know what? Oh, yeah, let's settle it down. Let's take it down about 10 notches. My word. You say turn it up to 11. That was like 27 or 28. It was way past 10. There's nothing in it. Oh, my word.
I think we're probably at a point now where I'd like to think that the team owners and that have all got in the ear of the drivers and said, you know what? Let's just calm down. Everyone's sort of got themselves a little bit of real estate between each other, and I think at the moment we are probably just going to see this little run of just a little bit of patience. We'd probably like to hope that that's what these drivers are going to do just to get themselves a few more laps under this belt, because we're 9 laps in. If you start racing as hard as these guys were at the start of this race and you want to go all the way to the end, you're going to have nothing at the end. You'll be absolutely exhausted.
I'll tell you what, look at Jared Philsell in that 94 entry starting to zero on in on the back end of Jake Maloney. Maloney's sort of forced to keep the pace up. He might want a fuel save, but he can't, because if he does, well, it's Jared Philsell that's going off, and that breaks up the 3-car team in the middle of things. Then Trans-Tasman Racing, because you've got Myers down Maloney, or Linus Stern as it currently stands. I'll tell you what, Marcelo Rivera is actually just being quite complacent with Dylan Rudd, giving him a fair bit of space. He's not pushing him on hurriedly. He's just sort of lurking there. Yeah, he's punching a reasonable pace. I probably couldn't do too much better if I was leading. We're just going to drop further and further back, and it's going to cause more dramas. So he is using his race brain just a little bit. But yeah, Ethan Greengold's not had a great start to this season. Remember the Brome engine at Phillip Island? Things didn't go well for him with one of the most damaged cars at Sebring at the tail end of that race that was still running. Desperately needs some points here as the driver of the 7 for ERT, and he sits in second place. That will be a good points night, and that's why he's using his race brain. Don't need to win this thing. P2's probably good enough. We'll take some points, boys.
You touching on what Marcelo might be thinking. He's obviously there driving right behind Dylan Rudd. He knows that Dylan's teammate is up front leading this race. They've probably got some sort of race plan going on in the back of their head. So Marcelo's in a good spot where he can just sort of tack along. He knows he's in touch with the leaders. He can see them as we're right on board the roof, and we can see the drivers aren't too far up the road. So being that it's so early on, just keep this single file stuff. Stay in touch, look after your car, and see what you've got to push on with a little bit later. But just as we see that, oh, Jared's trying to pick off another one there.
Yeah, and has managed to do so. So straight through goes Phil Sell at the inside at turn 3. And now he's going to have rampant Jake Maloney trying to close back in. They don't lose the draft, and that's crucial. And Maloney might have a go. No, he's just about there. Loses the front end of the car underneath the rear of Jared Philsell. Couldn't quite get enough out of the splitter to maintain that proximity. And it all calms down once again. But that's another spot now for Jared Philsell. He's now +8. And remember again, Sebring carved his way through the field. His first penalty for something that's gone in that race, and Dylan O'Shea gets a penalty for contact with Blake Warboys at the end of lap 1. That was on we didn't see that one actually. That was turn 10 on lap 1, so that's coming onto the main straight. So it was something else that went on lap 1, which Red Rull Ring, it's always going to happen.
Absolutely. Still got a straight race car. You know, at the end of the day, is this the replay? What we're going to see here? This is action just back in the pack. Oh, it's going to be a dive up the inside. So this is live pictures. Gets the job done there. So a lot of give and take here back here, which is good. This is what we need to see from these drivers. Not being silly, not throwing their dummy out at each other's drivers, and just trying to punch out these laps and just make sure that they've got something to race with as the race goes on.
Yeah, It's all about making sure you've got something at the tail end. No use burning the rubber off it only for it to just peel off the car in 5 laps. That does you no good. Battle pack, though, from 3rd spot on back, it goes all the way to 15th. Then there's another pack from 16th to 22nd. Then another pack from 23rd to 28th. And then there's this pack from 30th to 40th. It's everywhere. It's just... It feels like a little bit like NASCAR, doesn't it? Everyone's just quite together on the track. So this is the incident from O'Shea that's got him penalised for the 5 seconds that he'll serve at the pit stop. Gets to the inside award, boys, at the last corner. Yeah.
Oh.
Interesting. They've clearly seen another angle. So I said this after Phillip Island. There was something missing in what we saw at Phillip Island's coverage. That angle didn't quite show us what we needed to say what went on at the last corner. And the stewards have clearly seen another couple of angles and gone, yep, he's missed the apex there. He's the one that's run a little bit wide. That's 5 seconds.
Unfortunately, it's so easy to do there. It's such a little short shoot there, whereas if you commit and make the dive, once you're sort of in there a little bit too late, it's hard to pull the car up sometimes. But yeah, sometimes it's inevitable that little bit of damage is going to happen. So unfortunately, that contact happened, and he's going to serve a penalty for it.
That's the shot that we needed to see. Ooh, interesting one.
That's why I love being a commentator.
You know what it is? Dylan O'Shea had no overlap prior to the turn-in point.
Yeah.
That's why he's been penalised. He was not up far enough. That's the reason for the penalty. Exactly the same reason Andrew Gilliam got penalised, remember, at MG at Phillip Island.
Jared getting the job done on Madison down. So yeah, Jared's not quite content just to sit there. He's actually quite keen to push on. So he's been picking off these TTR cars just one at a time. And obviously Madison wasn't going to put too much of a fight. He's pretty switched on to say, you know what, Jared, if you're keen to get the job done, off you go. And he'll start punching that hole there for Madison. So good to see that he's slowly starting to pick them off. I guess we didn't have to be too concerned here. I guess it's a little bit different for him. Sometimes we see him leading these races and he finds himself a little bit bored. He won't be saying that at the end of tonight, because starting back in 17th and already at P8 at the moment, he's getting the job done. Yeah.
And he's had some overtaking to do, but he's done it very, very well. And he's got some very good long-run pace. He's not locking like with all these moves. He's burned the tyre off it all, because if he was, he wouldn't be charging the front. I'll tell you what, he was actually the fastest car on track last lap too. It was Jared Philcell. 0.2 of a second faster than the leaders.
Look at the car too. The car hasn't got a mark on it. And that's the important part, is just to bring that car through the field nice and clean, and he'll be very strong come towards the end of the race.
Well, he's looking after the tyres. He's again, what are we talking about at the top of the show? Box tick, box tick, box tick. Last year, finished with the win. 2022, finished in P2. So he knows this track, supremely talented at this track. Set himself a hard task here tonight, starting to measure up to it. They're nearly nose to tail as they run into turn 3. Just up ahead of them, it's the teammates, the Vermilion Sim Sports boys, Rick Kuznetsov and Andrew Gilliam, that have been working together now for a fair while. It was Jordan Ross, nearly got a good old whack to the rear end of that one from Dylan O'Shea. And O'Shea wanting to get the elbows out, start to charge back through the field. And Jordan Ross looks off pace. This is not like his pace that we've seen from him the last couple of years at the Red Rull Ring. There were 2 drivers that stuck out in terms of their consistency. It was Jordan Ross and Jared Philcell. Neither of them got a good qualifying performance. So I think that says don't find your way into Rankin's stat list heading into round 4.
Talking about stats, Jay's thrown an interesting stat at us, that incident limits at this racetrack are 30, and we've already seen some drivers like Nixon, he's already at 22 incident points now at the moment. It's only lap 13. So he's really got to be either really tidy for the rest of this race, or start thinking about when he's going to serve that penalty.
Think about what he's been in and around thus far throughout the race. Remember the number of times he was 2 wide, 3 wide at corners that it's sometimes tricky to get through single file. So he's certainly not had a lot in the way of options in the way to manage that. Probably a couple car contacts in there as well.
Yeah, you're right. On the side of that car. Yep. So, yeah, he's got a lot of battle damage, but yeah, really needs to tidy it up for the rest of this race. And yeah, obviously, it's an easy racetrack to get off tracks as well. So you've got to be careful. There's like turn 1 and the final turn, and through that little short shoot, it is easy to get it off track there, especially here. You'll see the drivers up against that curve on that yellow curve there, right there. It's so easy to get an off track right there.
Yeah, so just ahead of Damien Johnson, all the way back in 36 is Teo Serrano. So Teo Serrano gets an off track point added to his tally for the exit at turn number 1. But if you're not using them, you're not using all the racetrack, and as those tyres start to wear, you've got to be using all that racetrack. It's very, very easy as Damian Johnson gets it on the power. Gets squirrely off of turn 3. It's just, again, clumps of cars everywhere you look. They're sort of coming to and froing just about everywhere up and down the racetrack.
Ooh.
What's Phil Stell's progress look like as Luke Rosella tries to get to the inside now. Brady Baldwin gets that one done. And it's not too bad. He's done fairly well with that one.
Yes, just in case you weren't aware, James Scott is still the leader of this race. These two just running their own race. They're not worrying about everything else that's going on behind them. You know, at the end of the day, it's nice to be leading a race, but sometimes you don't get all that TV time that you deserve because there's just not much happening. These guys would be quite happy with that too. James Scott and Ethan Goodgold, the way the race is playing out at the moment, they'd be quite happy not to have the cameras on them at this stage because the way it's turning out is it could look to be a really good result come the end of the night.
Ian Ford currently chills out in 29th position. He's the only driver either getting a tow from somebody else or, only driver not getting a tow from somebody else or giving a tow to somebody else currently as it sits. So,
Poor lad looks lonely, doesn't he?
I find it's quite easy. Sometimes you sort of sit here and you go, oh, gee, this is easy. This is actually quite relaxing. I could do this metronomically for the next hour or so.
I could do that, but I'm usually slow when I do that, and there's no one else around me. So that's my problem. But he'd be looking at his mirror and seeing all this action behind him. So he can see what's happening behind him. So he's just hitting his markers and not worrying about it. But looks like they are getting a little bit hungry here, thinking about some moves. But at the end of the day, yeah, it's nice to have that clear track around you, not having pressure in front or behind.
So it's Brian Borg in this pack that leads it out of 30th place. Sebastian Flock next in the queue. Ahead of Connor Nixon and Michael Whiting. As they all file on through. Andre Yusuf, Teo Serrano, Damian Johnson, Zach Rattray White after getting turned early on, and Thomas Freeman, who started from the rear of the field. And then you've got Rosella and Bowler at the back end of this one, and Brady Baldwin's all the way back there. Rosella's starting to charge back through as well, so I reckon, looking at that, if we have a look around at all the Lobs Esports cars, they're supremely good at looking after their tyres thus far.
And that's confidence, isn't it, as a race goes on? You know that, you know, if you've got teammates throughout this grid and they're all pretty much running as well as they are and they're all looking after their gear, that gives you that confidence. So if you are finding yourself a little bit further back in the pack, that you can probably push that tiny bit more because the cars are so good on their rubber. And I'll tell you what, that'd be a real feather in their cap, knowing that they've got that little bit of advantage possibly over the rest of the field if the cars are that good.
Yeah, so to the inside, Michael Whiting's now going to get up and alongside of Connor Nixon to try and get the move done. And doesn't quite complete that one when they get out the other side, but Nixon will be on the outside now when they get down to turn 4. It's a tricky little braking zone there, so it sort of comes over the crest. Very easy to pinch a front tyre and run wide. Got to have a lot of rearward bias to pull the car up accurately. You've got to trail brake it in quite heavily as well, as you see those rears just glowing on the run down the hill.
Oh, it looks like I reckon Nixon's going to hold on. Is he going to? Oh, how close. But good give and take between these two. I really thought he was going to be able to hold on there, but at the end of the day, got the job done. That was really good battling. Nice little spatial awareness between the two, and they're able to push on.
Yep, job done there. Luke Rosella gets himself a 5-second penalty for contact earlier in the race with 19 machine. Deep down the inside. God, he's deep trying to get in there. And yeah, he's absolutely run that one right and run O'Shea out of room. That's pretty bog standard that for being a penalty. It's always a penalty.
Yeah, it's hard to when as soon as you lock that front, it's like you're just a passenger there, and unfortunately, just it didn't play out for him as well as you would have hoped, and yeah, just have to take that on the chin, unfortunately.
Now Phil Sells managed to pick off another driver, and it's Brady Myers. And it's happened this lap too, as he slots his way up and into 7th spot. Now he's on a charge. Now he's looking at Rick Kuznetsov up the road as well. And look at that margin that he's narrowed to Dylan Rudd. He's going to get to the front end of this pack and probably, the next 10 laps or so. And all of a sudden just start to run away. I don't know if he can charge his way up to the lead. That's a hefty margin to be 5.7 seconds back to Dylan Rudd off the lead, and then to Phil Sells 7.5 seconds. He's going to lose at least another second overtaking cars to get there, probably 2 to 3. That's a huge margin to run down, but I mean, he's been quick the last couple laps.
Yeah, look, I think his mindset now is just to get to the front of this leading pack. I don't think he has to worry about James Scott out front. It's a teammate. So when the race goes on, as pit stops play out, you just don't know. You know, maybe James Scott might look after his car a little bit, might just bring the field back together. So that just be for Jared, just to get in front of these cars and probably start to think about catching on to the back of that as this race goes on.
Well, we're just shy of the third race distance, and that means 2 compulsory pit stops. Race gets split in 3. Lap number 18, driver's going to come filing. So end of lap 17, driver's going to come filing into the pit lane. Scott Gamble, Robbie Gibbs, Sebastian Flock, Hayden Bell, 4 drivers to be the early takers. They're looking for a way out of the battle pack that they were sort of stuck in. One of the ways they can do that is with the undercut, but they've got to be very, very careful they don't come out behind the leaders. There's drivers at the tail end of the field. I think there's been a couple of pit stops thus far. Jake Burton and Brenton Hobson have both been through the lane as well. So they've gone for the undercut, and they come last lap by. So looking for a little bit of fresh air, looking for a way to push themselves forward. Undercut will do that. Lap time at the start of the race, 29.4 was the fastest lap for James Scott. He's fallen off about 0.7 of a second. Not a huge deal of tyre wear there, but for Jake Burton, 30.6 is fastest lap of the race. He'll be hoping to improve on that one this time by.
I love that these drivers have done that. They've just broken it up a little bit, get themselves out of that muzzle of cars that they might be caught up in, and get some fresh air, get some new tyres on it, and just change the race as far as the strategy plays out, because you just don't know what's going to happen. Do we get a late safety car? Do we get a safety car at all? I mean, at the moment, Scott and Good Gold, they'd be like, we don't need a safety car. We're pretty happy with the way the race is playing out. We don't care about what happens the rest of the field, but it's just that unknown, that magic unknown. And I tell you what, can you imagine how this is going to play out over the next year or so when we finally get wet weather racing into the supercars? I mean, how much of a factor would that play into this race if the clouds were starting to come over? So that'll whet the appetite as the sort of months play out. We don't know when that update is coming out for the supercars, but can you imagine that just throwing a spanner in the works as well?
I was sitting around enjoying a few chats about different topics within the racing sim, and none of this comes from information. I don't sit in an information privileged position, but I tell you, everyone was chatting about, I reckon Gen 3 might be coming next season. I don't reckon it'll come to the end of the year. I reckon it's coming at this date. I reckon it's coming at this date. I reckon it'll come before Bathurst. So keep that in the back of your mind. Not just Rain, but the Gen 3. And I have money on they'll probably come together. Rain and the Gen 3 as Brian Borg is getting assaulted by Michael Whiting as it currently stands. To the inside for Borg, round the outside for Michael Whiting, trying to get the crossover. Down at turn 4 on the run downhill, and now Zach Rattray White will be sitting there having a look. Damien Johnson off the road and out of position as it currently stands.
I don't know if he just went in a little bit tight there, got him a little bit deep, was into the gravel, but unfortunately it doesn't play it out for him. Car's still straight and he's on the racetrack, that's the main thing. So he'll push on now, just put that behind him, but yeah, it looked like there was a bit of gravel coming out underneath there as he rejoined the racetrack.
So the OG replay will have a look. Has Sandman called every aspect of that one correctly? Yeah, he has.
You might have thought I'd watched a race or two in my time, eh? How about that? And you brought it up before. You said how easy it is just to lock a tyre into that corner because of the way the racetrack is. So unfortunately, he's pinched that brake, and that's unloaded the car, and he's got off the gravel. But thankfully, he's got a straight car. So there you go. The old crystal ball's working for tonight, so that's a good start.
Gee, it's nearly like you're a professional.
Very far from that, I tell you, my friend.
That's why we sit up here in a comms booth, because we can both steer a race car. It's not pretty. You don't want to watch. Trust me. In terms of things, at the moment, Jordan Ross still trying to punch through and get that job done. Dylan O'Shea's punched his way through to the head end of this pack. He's back to where he started. Started out at 16th spot. He's been beaten and boxed around the ears. He's not had a clean race, and the car shows the battle scars just a little bit. But now he's back to P16. Another replay coming our way for the overtake for Dylan O'Shea. Run up to turn 3, up the hill, down the inside. Jordan Ross just said, yep, look, you got me. I'm not going to defend that one too hard.
So he doesn't have to worry about that. The highlight is that he made the OG gear replay. So, yeah, just make a little bit of space there on the exit and just let the driver through.
And check this one out. Dylan Rudd starting to ail in terms of pace, pushing on, and Marcelo Rivera's gone. There's an opportunity here to be had. he's not gaining too much. There was a couple of comments, spoke to Madison down a few times about it. He said, yeah, those Lobs Esports cars, they're very, very trimmed out in a straight line. We were struggling to catch them even in their toe all the way back at Sebring. I wonder if they're not running a little bit less wing than the rest of us. And do you see Rivera made no ground on that straight there?
Yeah, and you touched on it too, did you? We were talking about trimming out these cars for these straightaways. You know, what do you want to do? Do you want to carry a little bit more wing? Do you want to give up that for the long straightaways? And if you can get that balance with as little wing on it, you know, it's really, really puts you in good stead for whatever the race plays out, because you know you've got yourself a decent race car in a straight line, and if you can get it to behave through the tight, twisty stuff, then you've got yourself a decent race car.
By the way, have a look on the background. There was another Vermilion Sim Sports car. There was a couple of them that were right attached to that. Gilliam's dived to the lane, so he's disappeared out of here. I don't think Greg Galt's having some issues you might be able to see in the background. He has had a disastrous year this far. Hopefully it settles down for Greg Galt. In the meantime, though, Phil Sell's up to 5th. Gilliam, I think, has dived to the lane to try and get out of this queue, so he's got fresh rubber on, sits 23rd as it currently stands. And Jared Philsell effectively passed 2 cars for the sake of one there. He got past both of the Vermilion Sim Sports cars with ease, as one of them peeled to the lane and the other one didn't bother fighting it too much. Well, Philsell's up to 5th. This could be a challenge for the podium in a couple laps up. Could he try and undercut these guys? He might. He might just have a go at that.
You know, I didn't touch on it not that long ago, is that his goal is basically just to get in front of this pack, start leading this pack and not worry about what the leaders are doing. He's still got decent car speed, and on, 22 lap old tyres, the car is still good. So, you know, at the moment, he doesn't have to worry about fretting straight into pit lane because he's burnt off his tyres. He knows he's got decent speed around him. Obviously, he's going to lack pace when everyone's in for new rubber, but for the moment, the way it's going, if you've got your car driving well, you've got a little bit of fuel in the tank to use, I'd just keep pushing on.
Well, now they start to settle down on it in. Who's going to run long? Who's going to come to the lane early? Gilliam's already played his cards. He's tried to throw a couple fakes out. He's just had to go to the inside of Ian Ford. Ian Ford on older rubber just ran a 30.856. Well, Gilliam's going to be a fair bit quicker than that. Probably about a second a lap quicker than that in terms of his race pace as it currently stands. McNamara will be the next car on the road, though. Remember we said Ian Ford was running off and on his own. That's actually perfect, because that's right about where these cars are going to pop out, is right in around Ian Ford. There's a big hole there, Sandman. So traffic, not going to be an issue. You can undercut. That means.
Yes, yeah. And team managers will look at that stat too. They'll see that there's that nice little bit of real estate where they know they can get their drivers in and not having to worry about trip over some traffic. So I think the teams will be all over that and utilising that as best they can, because that's a free kick in our sport. When you can come out from a pit stop and you've got no hindrance in front of you, that is just absolutely pure gold.
Tell you what, a safety car right now would play right into Andrew Gilliam's hands. He's got one pit stop out of the way. Cannot get home from here. Has to get to lap 33, remember. But if you can say, let's add some fudge factor. Let's say 30, right? Let's say our boffins sit there and count fuel by the droplet. They get it a little bit wrong, or there's some saving you can do. Let's say lap 30 you can get home. That's 34 laps in a tank. We're 8 laps away from that marker. So safety car right now, he'd be sitting good. He'd have got both of his compulsory pit stops out. The thing is, I think he wants this one to run long. I think everyone wants to run this one to run long. I don't know how many safety cars we'll see. Whiting to the lane, Rosella to the lane, Damien Johnson to the lane. So this will be Rosella looking to try and buy some track position back off. He was starting to catch cars and have to cut his way through them. Probably not a bad idea. As for the drivers who have now finished, there's going to be a whole boatload of them. And Gilliam was the first, and he was about 22nd, 23rd. So he's going to grab a few spots on this lap. Brenton Hobbs and Stenberg have now completed their stops as well. So they sit 29th in terms of things. That's sort of the field's really shuffling about as we currently come down to the second last corner. James Scott into the lane, and Ethan Green-Galt does what he's done all race, follows him in.
Nice little gain too under brakes there, just into the braking zone of the lane. So made up some good ground there for Ethan. I'm just glad, I'm taking a breath for him, because we were a bit worried about his internet connection there earlier, and we thought they'd probably drop out. So fingers crossed that stays stable for him for the rest of the night.
Well, now everyone's come through the lane, and there's 2 Lobs Esports cars in. Rosella was in the lap before as well. And now look at Jared Philsell starting to close at a rate of knots. And the tricky part for Luke Rosella is his pit. Well, he's now a lap down, and look at all the traffic he's just had to jump out of the way of. There's nothing he can do. His night's effectively done, and this will be the first time he'll get to potentially score points. I hope I don't put the mockers on him after that one as well. And Scott took a fair chunk of fuel. No, he didn't take all that much fuel. Ethan Grigolt's actually taken the longest pit stop ever that's stopped at the moment. So Ethan Grigolt's sacrificed a little bit of track position, sacrificed being right on James Scott's rear bumper, and that's going to change. And he's had to throw the thing to Thomas Freeman's inside because he doesn't want to get held up. And Gilliam has popped out with the lead of all the cars that pit thus far. So Andrew Gilliam's in a great spot in track position, but he's got a big fuel bill to pay at this final pit stop.
It's a little bit of swings and roundabouts too at this stage, isn't it? You know, obviously we're seeing different speeds with tyres. A pinch of the brakes there. Oh, it's always, man, we haven't spoken about that a lot, is that pit entry, is just how crucial it is just to be well communicated with the drivers around you, knowing that you're going to dart off into the pit lane, because it's so easy to get caught up in an incident for that pit entry.
And it's the risk you take, isn't it, Sandman? Because one thing is, you kind of want to let the guy behind you know, hey, I'm probably going to peel into the pit lane here. On this lap, one of the ways you can do it is probably a couple touches of the brake, just to sort of says, hey, I'm maybe pitting. Sometimes you might have a spotter and you might have somebody walk down and say hello to their team, but you don't want to give information away. Everyone likes their closely held secrets. I don't know a single poker player that plays with their hand open.
That's right. But yeah, it's catch-22, isn't it? You don't want to get drilled when you start in a pit lane. Now, talking about pit lane, I wonder how much longer it's going to be before we start to see these drivers. Jared Philsell, Brady Myers, Madison Down. These guys now just sort of staying in touch, letting this race play out a little bit. And as I touched on before, there is going to be that swings and roundabouts, because there's drivers that have been on fresh tyres for quite some time. They're going to have some pace, and they're probably going to come out way in front of these guys. So it's not about panicking at this stage, because they will start to come back to them as the other drivers put on their fresh tyres when their tyres start to go off.
Now, I'm really curious. I want to see what James Scott's pace looks like relative to Andrew Gilliam. What does Ethan Griggolt got? Because he's got more fuel in that car as Griggolt. Now, there was 5 to 7, there was, 6 seconds back to Dylan Rudd before they all picked. So, you know, there was a window there for him of maybe 4 seconds he could drop. He's dropped about half of that. So he will still have a significant margin. Dylan Rudd's obviously out on track as well. So Grigolt's going to have no support for this next run. What's his pace going to look like without James Scott time around? And is that James Scott playing a game with him as well, going, nah, I don't want to tell you this, Stin, I'm going to underfill a little?
Yeah, we've got Philsell, who's decided to dart into pit lane, I think we can see on the timing sheets. But Myers and Down, they've still continued to stay out. Josh Anderson as well. So mixing it up a little bit between this. It's good to see that everyone's not just doing follow the leader. They've got a little bit of strategy that's playing out, and these TTR guys are trying to stick together, just letting this race go and run its run on just before pit stop. So, like we said, it's going to be a big shake-up with fresh tyres and old tyres, but really interesting to see how it plays out and how it starts to look at around maybe lap 30 to 35.
I'll tell you what, Dylan Rudd was 6 seconds quicker through the lane than Ethan Griggolt was. That's a lot of fuel that Ethan Griggolt took, but that means his last stop is going to be fairly cheap in terms of the order of things. And as for Philsell, what does he feed out? He feeds out ahead of Rivera, even though Rivera went for the undercut. So I reckon Philsell's underfueled a little bit. So that's a strategy by the entire Lobs Esports, Speed Cafe Lobs Esports team, to underfill a little bit. Their fuel bill at this last stop is going to be higher than everyone else's for every car out of that outfit.
So what they'll want to do now is just push like crazy, trying to open up that little gap. And because they, like you said, they know they're going to get burnt in the pit stops. I guess the one thing they really don't want to see now is that safety car. I mean, it could work out nicely for them, but you know, that could make things a little bit difficult. Obviously, you're going to be in the lane a little bit longer, but all we see now, a couple of other TTR cars have decided to hit the lane, but it looks like Myers and Down, they're still out there. So Anderson, Maloney, Burke's in there, Forzan El Nabi's in there as well. So these guys have decided to peel off, and they've got going to get their fresh tyres on and push on.
Yeah, who's going to burn them up? Who's going to go quite hard? Jordan Ross we're looking at on the screen at the moment. I talked him up a lot. I talked a big story up about Jordan Ross. And I guess the thing is, I'm never ever going to get into horse racing, I think, Sandman, because commentators' curses are just, you can't get away from them. So, yeah, I'm not going to become a betting man, I don't think.
Well, if I ever go to the track, which I never do, is I'll make sure I find out who you've bet on so I can bet on the others.
Gee, thanks. Good to see you've got confidence in my picks too. Brady Myers leads the way, opting to run long at the moment, as does Madison Down in terms of things. The entire TTR outfit ran long. But now Anderson and Maloney will pit this time through, so they've been through. So it's just the guys up at the front that are continuing to run on. You got to do something different. You cannot do the same thing as the car around you, or you'll end up in the same place, I think is the story that they're running. But we've seen this a little bit from TTR. They're quite happy to run long on that first stint, aren't they?
I love that they don't panic at what everyone else is doing around them. They don't freak out that, oh my God, someone else is headed to the pit lane. They just run their own strategy, and they're obviously pretty confident the way it's playing out at this stage. They know that they're going to take a hit by the time they join pit lane. They know that these other drivers that are on fresh tyres are going to have some margin on them, but they'll start to pull them back as their tyres that have pitted earlier, everyone else's tyres will start to go off. They'll still have the fresher side of tyres, and that's where they'll be able to catch up again. So they're not worried about it. They're running their own game, and I reckon good on them too. They're not just doing the follow the leader type thing.
Yeah, have a look at Josh Anderson, sits 17th at the moment. So corrected fuel strategy. Who have we got left to pit? Brady Myers, Madison Down, Jordan Ross, Tom Freer, Adam Briggs. So all your top 5. Richard Hampstead is the last car ahead of the guys who have pit. Ian Ford is still yet to pit as well. So we have 7 drivers yet to come down through the pit lane, and Jared Philsell says, yeah, I've had pace this whole time, boys. Goes ahead and shows it. 29.357, fastest lap of the race for the 94 car. He's starting to range up onto his teammate now, Dylan Rudd. He's a lot closer to him than he has been at any stage throughout this race, and he's getting closer and closer and closer to those guys up the track from him. He took 0.4 of a second out of Ethan Griggold on that lap as well. So Griggold's got a lot of fuel on board, and he's going to suffer in terms of tyres in this stint. Last stint is where he's hoping to make his gains.
It's good to see that Jared's doing these times, because this is what he needs to do. We talked about the shorter stop that he took, so he hasn't got as much fuel as what a lot of the other drivers around him have. So he now needs to make hay while the sun's shining, is just get that margin out and push out that gap as much as he can, because he knows he's going to take that burn in the pits when he has to take on that rest of that fuel.
Tell you what, Andrew Gilliam's stop was like 14 seconds shorter in the bulk of the field. About 10 seconds shorter than most drivers, but he was 14 seconds shorter through the lane compared to James Scott, and 16 seconds shorter through Ethan Galt. So James Scott did take a little bit more fuel on than the bulk of the drivers. And you got that leeway when you're out in front as well. So the margin's going to play itself back out in front of those front two should they continue to have a clean race. So James Scott and Ethan Griggold sit very, very strategically ahead of everyone else at this current juncture. The question is, how long do these guys run? By the way, we're coming up on that you can make it home point from here. So if a safety car was to happen right now, these TTR guys are in trouble. They can only get 1 compulsory pit stop out of the way. The entire rest of the field can get their second stop done.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I was just thinking about, I was looking at the laps, and importantly on the timing, I was looking at the field spread on the track map that we've got access to, is just how spread out this entire field is all the way around this racetrack. So many different options for these teams and drivers for it to play out, and it's hard to know who's put the bets down as far as who's got the best strategy at this stage, because it's still we're not quite at lap 30 yet.
And I can tell you, Brady Myers has just found his way into the pit lane, so he will peel off. The other 2 guys in behind him in those team cars are going to continue on. So Madison Town continues on. Richard Hampstead's now at the pit lane entry and dives into the lanes. There goes Brady Myers down through the pit lane. And you'll see Richard Hampstead coming down the hill and through the Austrian pit lane. And that run up and out the hill. God, it looks on the surface, when you have a look at the aerial track map, just straight down over the track, you go, oh gee, that's boring. There's nothing in that. At least Bathurst, if you were to flatten it out, it's got a little bit of character. There's some this way, that way. But it's the elevation change. It never gets talked about enough about this place.
Yeah, love the undulation, and we mentioned it before about that, I guess that into, I guess, what would you call it, turn 3, 4, where they lock up tyres. It's so easy because the car's unsettled, it's down, it's a little bit off camber, it's easy to lock a tyre. So, and that's what this racetrack brings, is between the racing, there's so much character in this racetrack that it really does prove a point with good racing.
Where did Brady Myers manage to feeds back out in 8th as it currently stands. And he's going to try and get to the inside of Marcelo Rivera. Now, Rivera came down the pit lane 5 laps earlier than Brady Myers did. And Brady says, I think I've got enough of an overlap here. And now he will pull along outside. And Rivera struggling in straight line speed. He had a little bit of a toe, and Brady Myers was still quicker than him in terms of the straight line. So there's some downforce on that ERT car, which says it should look after its tyres quite well. We did see that from Rivera late on in the first stint. It was right up and on Dylan Rudd. It was very, very quick late on in the run. But yeah, he's struggling to make the overtakes in a straight line as Marcelo Rivera as it currently stands. Madison down, reigning series champion, comes to the lane finally. And he will finally get rid of those tyres. I tell you what, we are 2 laps away from halfway throughout this motor race. And at first stanza, God, it was epic. There was just cars everywhere. There was argy-bargy, elbows were out. And then it's settled down a little bit. Now we've hit that first pit stop. Who's in position? Who's set themselves up for a charge at the end? And Jared Philsell, by the way, now moves himself into 4th on the racetrack. But remember, Gilliam undercut them by a lot and didn't put a lot of fuel in that car. And it might be worthwhile having that graphic back up to have a look at the difference between Andrew Gilliam's pit stops and probably the whole top 10 is worthwhile having a shout at. There you go. Have a look at the right-hand side of the timing tower. Not the gaps, the one just into the inside of them. A 12-second stop for Andrew Gilliam. He's got a massive fuel bill to pay.
Yeah, it's hard, isn't it? It's you know you've got to take that pain, and it's up to you whether you take the pain early on or take it later on. But yeah, it's frightening when you know you've got that stationary time in front of you when everyone else around you, probably doesn't have to stay in the pits that long.
I'm really curious to see how that plays out because his lap times are good now for Andrew Gilliam. Now that he's got a much lighter car compared to everyone. The tyres have stalled out and he's not really running away from everyone. So he's matching them. And he come to the lane 3 laps prior to James Scott, 3 laps prior to Ethan Greek-Galt. And 5 laps prior to Phil Sell. There's a ton of cars that are in and around all of that. And yeah, everyone's on a different strategy. He's got to be not far away, I reckon.
How's the train behind Phil Sell though? That's incredible. Like, we talked about the pit stop times and everything else, but just the way all these drivers are just trying to stay in touch and using that draft where they can. But lap 32, it's still a little bit of an unknown as far as who's going to come out on top here. Obviously the early stages we saw James Scott and Ethan Greek-Galt just absolutely running away with it. But the way this field is now all gathering up, move up the inside there. Brady Myers gets the job done. Up the inside of Dylan Rudd, nice and clean, covers his line there, but Myers now just pushing on. I think he's pretty happy with that car as this is playing out and just wants to stay in touch with Jared Philsell.
Yeah, well, he's got fresh rubber. He's got 6 laps fresher rubber compared to Dylan Rudd. It's 4 laps now to Jared Philsell, and Myers was deep in under the brakes, and now Madison Downs managed to try and put the move on around Marcelo Rivera. So Rivera's starting to slide back through this field. Here come the TCR cars. Tell you what, they were just ticking boxes up until this point. Now they're starting to get the pace on.
Absolutely. They knew that they'd have, obviously the fresher tyres when everyone else's tyres were just that little bit older. So they know that they've got that tyre advantage now at the moment. And what they want to do is look after it as this race goes on, because that's done themselves a nice little favour. When you can go as long as they can into this stint and know that they've got fresher tyres over the rest of the field, even if it's only by a couple of laps, that's really handy to have in your back pocket.
Yeah, and we are now past the halfway mark in terms of this race, and that means that we have had about 135 or so kilometres complete, about 138 kilometres in terms of things complete out of this motor race. 138 kilometres to go. Normally with pit stops you break it up into thirds, but they're not doing that over at TCR. There's no way they run it all the way out to lap 60. So when do you pit now? When do you make this last stop? Do you do it with 17 to go or so?
It's catch-22 again, isn't it? I think it all comes down to how your track position is before you go into the pit lane. But you also want to leave yourself that time to make up that advantage on the fresh rubber. There's no point pitting late towards the end of the race, having fresh rubber on and not being able to use that advantage of the tyre and just wasting it at the end. So give yourself enough rubber at the end where you're competitive, but don't leave it too long where you're going to cut yourself a couple of laps short to chase down the leaders, because obviously there's so many unknowns. There's still another pit stop to play out. The likelihood of another safety car is pretty slim, isn't it? When you look at this racetrack, there's a lot of runoff. We've seen a couple of people have of offs here, but you know, the barriers are quite some distance away from the racetrack, so the chances of having a big accident where it may cause a safety car, who knows? But you know, you wouldn't sort of hedge your bets at this stage with a safety car.
Yeah, and now the rubber starts to play an equation into this one. And think about Ethan Greek-Gulp. Right now, he's starting to drift back and drift back and drift back into the clutches, these guys. So, Andrew Gilliam, we've just sort of touched on that he's gone for that undercut. The problem for Andrew Gilliam at this point in time is he's going to lose 14 seconds to these guys. He's only going to lead. Let's be generous and say he's got a 6-second lead. Let's be a little bit generous there and say he's got a 6-second lead. Where does that put him in terms of standings? Well, 14 seconds dropped in terms of the pit stop. That's going to be in and around 9th, 10th spot. So overall, he's going to be a big loser in terms of this equation once he takes all that fuel on board. But got that stop in, got himself out of the chain, running his own lap, running his own pace. That's what he was looking for. It's working right now, but it's not going to work out a little bit later on. Looking back in the pack a little bit as well as we look through a number of the cars. Wayne Burke we touched on, Bo Albert, Griffin Gardner. That was Adam Briggs we just saw on screen. Tom Freer, so the SSR Synergy Sim Racing boys running in 16th and 17th, whereas Briggs and Freer, Richard Hampstead, Jordan Ross in behind them as well. So everyone's just looking to, they've now confirmed where they're running in terms of the track. Now it's starting to go, well, how do I get this job done? What am I going to do? What am I capable of doing to improve myself? Where are those holes formed on the track? And believe me, the holes are starting to open up a little bit. There's only a couple of big packs of cars now.
As this race goes on, it makes me thankful that I'm a commentator and not a team strategist, because there's so much that can play out, and you know, you'd be praying that so many things can go your way, but you want your driver to be fast. You want your driver to be able to look after his or her equipment as this race goes on, because you know that that's going to be crucial as this race plays out. But you know, we talked about the lack of safety cars and the likelihood. It's all now just going to come down to driver and what they've got underneath them.
An interesting note in the background of things as well. Think about the guys from the Vermilion Sim Sports outfit. They've got Supreme one-lap pace. They've now got, okay, we've got pace. We've ticked all those boxes. Race pace has been a little bit scrappy. Rick Kuznetsov, remember, qualified on 5th position. He's sitting in 12th as it currently stands. Now he's in a big pack. That's him right there at the tail end of this pack. And this pack goes all the way up to Jared Philsell sitting in 4th. So he's in the right pack, but his race pace hasn't been great. Does that start to get you thinking, well, Andrew Gilliam had to do something different. He's his teammate. He has done something different. He's still going to come out right around these guys. So it's tricky. And what I like that we've seen this season from this pack is it's now sort of like an F1 style. Okay, we've got 3 cars in this pack. I'm going to have one of them do the undercut. Now what do you do? You'll move.
Yeah, that's right. The thing I think that Rick's got going in his favour is, his track position is P12, but he's on the tail of this draft. So if he can just keep in touch with that and let the pit stops play out, obviously there's going to be some variations as far as pit lane stationary time. So hopefully that can sort of bring him into the fold a little bit. But, you know, who knows how this is going to play out too. As close as these cars are all together, there's no rule to say that no one's going to make a little bit of a dive that might get a little bit greedy, lock up a tyre, cause some carnage. There might be 2 or 3 cars involved in it. We never know that we could have a multi-car wreck. So, you know, yes, he's back in 12th, but he's in a position where he's on the back of the train and, you know, a chance of making up a position if there's some drama.
Been a while since we've had no G Gear replay, and this will be the 900 of Andre Yusuf, and we're being told that this might have actually been a redress as well. It was issued. Andre Yusuf was told that he needed to give that spot back, and well, he did run Matty Bowler out of room on the exit at turn 3.
Yeah, again, pinch to brake. You can see that tyre smoke, so it's tricky, isn't it? You know, you lock a brake and you lock a tyre, and you know you've got to get off it, but as soon as you do, you make contact, and unfortunately. But good thing that he readdressed and didn't have to serve a drive-through penalty.
Interesting notes that we've just been handed. We think it's maybe about 3 laps or so before Andrew Gilliam's tank is empty and he's going to need to come to the pit lane. That's going to be 26 lap run to home. That's a long run, although they did that on the first run, but that's a lot of pace you're going to be sacrificing at the back end of the race. He's going to have to go like the clappers. The other thing I'm thinking in the background of my mind here, Sam, man, was that car fell off the road pretty quickly in the early stages. Maybe he pinched a front. It might have had a big front mock-up that we didn't see in all the action the first couple of laps, and that just sort of put paid to things, he was no longer able to get the front to sort of bite up and turn in.
Yeah, I put my driver's hat on. It's not a very good hat. It hasn't been used very often because it's not very fast. But, you know, I think about being the driver. I want fresher tyres towards the end of this race. And if I have to know I need to go sort of 20, nearly 30 laps on a set of tyres, it's like, yeah, it's doable. But, you know, it's not great when the rest of the drivers around you are going to be on sort of fresher rubber. So you want to try and stretch it out as much as you can. But, you know, you can only go as far as what the fuel tank will give you. And unfortunately, he's just got to look after his gear as this race goes on.
You know what's worth another look in? I'd like to have a little bit of a look at who's gained the most spots thus far, and then after we're done with that, we want to have a look at some live championship standings, because they're always good to have a look at. Well, the guys have been on the move. I said it to you at the start of the race. Whoa, those guys qualified out of sequence. Richard Hamstead, Jared Philselt, Sebastian Flock, also up a number of spots, Brian Borg and Forza Nalmi. They're all plus 10 or more. Scott Gamble, Thomas Freeman. Freeman, remember, started off the last row, but didn't set time. And then it's going to be Brenton Hobson, Kurt Stenberg, and Tom Freer. They're all the drivers that are on the move tonight. And Forza Nalmi's had a quiet night at the office. Really haven't talked about him. 21st to 11th. He's now in that big pack. And he drove his way forward at Sebring as well. Prior to things happening late on in the race. It'll be interesting to have a look at what the championship standings look like, because Dylan Rudd is having a great run at the office. So we might have a look at the top 10 in terms of championship standings in just a few moments. I think Rudd might have the championship lead as it currently stands. Yeah, he does. And it's going to be by about 32 points back to Rick Kuznetsov. Andrew Gilliam, remember, he's got a penalty to pay as Gilliam at this point in time, so he won't be sitting there come the end of the night. But have a look at Robbie Hughes. Starts this round leading the race. Currently would sit 6th in terms of championship standings.
Yeah, it's incredible, isn't it? We talked about how the movers and shakers, how it'd all play out as this race goes on, especially at the end of the night. And see down 2 creeping into that top 10 in 7th place as well. So, yeah, it's all playing out really interesting, and love the live points as this race, you know, goes on. And certainly going to be interesting, but you know, at the end of the day, you can only go as fast as you can, and if you're getting done on the racetrack, it just means you've got to work harder the next week and try to make the most of that championship standings of wherever you may be.
Tell you what, one of the things we never actually touched in prior to the race is actually the team's championship standings. Was the driver that's leading the way, or the team that's leading the way in that side of things, is Andrew Gilliam and Rick Kuznetsov, and we're watching Andrew Gilliam at the moment because we're expecting him to pit either this lap or the next lap, so it's going to be one more for Andrew Gilliam before his tank is empty. At least one more. And we're all sitting here scratching our heads and going, he's probably only one more that'll be left in that tank. Is Marcelo Rivera starting to close up in on Dylan Rudd. Rudd's starting to ail in terms of things. Remember, we saw this at the back end of that first stint as well, was Rivera was starting to really range up on Dylan Rudd. And hey, presto, second stint, same things happen. Now can we see Rivera get a touch closer to Dylan Rudd? Watch, this is going to be really, really important. Let's see how these cars are set up. So Rivera gets better drive off because he wasn't riding that sausage curve at the exit of turn 1. And that looks like Dylan Rudd's pulling away from him in a straight line.
Yeah, pulling away, you know, definitely even with him. So good straight line speed, but obviously just hurting a little bit through the corners. So, yeah, you just see the cars moving around a little bit, just trying to get the power down. But, yeah, as this race goes on, they need to sort of start thinking about what they've got.
Tell you what, Madison Down nearly put a number 1 punched into the rear end of Brady Myers' car, and that's teammates, and that was up at turn 3. So Brady Myers is now starting to have a few, you and your 50-cent parts, Sandman, there's a few of them being thrown around, I think, here tonight.
Just trying to see how it'll play out. I think there'd be a fair bit of communication between these lot, and if they're having dramas, they will just sort of give each other a little bit of real estate and maybe swap positions around. But
that's teammate on teammate.
Yeah, that could have been real ugly as we go to the OG gear replay. But, man, that could have been... So, Gilliam, we were talking about Gilliam was going to be firing in the pit lane. Here he is. So, he's still got to go, another 25 laps on this set of tyres. And we're going to see how it all starts to play out. But like we said, it's going to be a decent stop in the lane.
So, you sort of hold your breath now for a couple of laps. Who's going to start moving and shaking? moving and shaking. Who's going to move up the field? Who's going to move down the field? Who's played the strategy cards? Who's been fuel saving? Who's been pushing on? Someone that has been pushing on is Jared Philsell. And Ethan Greek Gold, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, has been run down. Here comes the move. This is for second on the racetrack. Philsell punches one more overtake into the books. Jared Philsell moves to second on the road. And boy, has he been hungry. Boy, has he been on the move tonight.
Yeah, we said that he needed to be fast too because he obviously spent a little bit less time. He took on less fuel in that pit stop, so we expected him to be able to push, and that's exactly what he's been able to do. No point sitting back in the field if you've got that lighter fuel tank in the car. You want to capitalise and make the most of it because you know you're going to be stationary just that little bit longer. So I think Ethan, as much as he's given up that spot, he won't be too concerned because he's supposed to be able to tack onto the back of Jared. He'll just be able to stay there and hopefully just stay in touch with him, and all these drivers now will start thinking about when they're going to come in for that last pit stop.
Well, now questions start to be asked. What is Ethan Greek going to do from here? How long is he going to take it? Is he maybe going to try and save some fuel for a couple laps? Does all of a sudden he feel the need to get a little bit antsy and go for the undercut and try and punch his way back forward? Because these guys have run him down from a fair way back. James Scott is now 6 seconds up the road. I don't think we're going to talk about him. I don't think these guys are going to see him for the rest of the night. It's going to take a safety car for anyone to ask questions of the 088 machine. The big question I think is going to be asked on track is, does fuel cell fall further through, or does does Ethan Greek Gold fall further through the field, or does fuel cell cover him off with a little bit of a toe now?
Yeah, I think what Greek Gold will be doing, he's quite happy just to sit. They know the difference that there's going to be stationary in the pit lane. So that's going to play a big factor when these pit stops come around. So, you know, at the moment where he's sitting in, he's not losing anything. He's just staying in that train. So as long as he doesn't get too much pressure from Brady Myers and Madison down, you know, that he knows that he's in a decent spot now, and just stay on touch with Jared. But yeah, the way it's playing out, I don't know that anyone's going to be able to put a hand on James Scott. That's a decent lead at this pace, and you know, just be interesting to see how it all plays out with these pit stop differences.
Well, it's time to put your money where your mouth is in terms of the pit stop cycle. The other one that's starting to shake up is have a look at how far Dylan Rudd's now fallen off the back end of this pack. Now they all start to cork in the bottle up in behind Ethan Greek Gold, and now Dylan Rudd starts to become the cork in the bottle. Saw this at the tail end of the first hit. Rivera does not have a car that's supremely quick in a straight line. He's got to find a way past. He's saved tyres, but now he can't make that speed. Now he can't really do anything about it. I reckon Rivera's going to have a crack. Rivera's got to absolutely have a crack at the undercut here. He took 2 seconds worth of fuel extra than Dylan Rudd in that first stop. If he has an undercut, this could be a third place on the cards for him.
Absolutely, and I'm hoping the team's telling him exactly that too, because you can utilise that advantage. And as the race goes on, you know, we're running out of laps. So if he feels he's getting held up, the best thing to do is take that dive into the lane, get that fresh set of tyres, and do the jump. That would absolutely work out nicely for him.
Well, gambling man, gambling man, gambling man. Take your bets, ladies and gentlemen. Time to lay it all on the table. Pick a number in the roulette. Gilliam pops out 28. Long stop, remember, from him. He's got to make hay whilst the sun shines on those tyres. He's going to ail on pace late, but he's absolutely going to try and make time. What's it look like up at the pointy end of things? Myers starts to show the nose, starts to look through the windscreen and force Ethan Galt to think about what's behind him, because that rear view mirror has been a lot more full than it has been for the race thus far.
Yeah, he's getting pressure here from Myers and Down. Obviously, they are probably the ones with the freshest set of tyres. They don't want to see Jared get away too much. Obviously, we keep talking about the pit stop differences, but you still want to be able to stay in touch. So is Ethan Greek just holding on as far as what he's got left under his rubber, or is he just trying to stretch that fuel a little bit and not exactly sure what he's trying to do? But hey, it's crucial for him to stay on the back of Phil Cell and not let Myers and Down get past him.
Key factor right now is that Dylan Rudd no longer has the toe of the pack up ahead of him. He's now dropped outside of that second mark, and that rear end of that car is starting to dance all over the place as they come out of the last corner. There's a couple of cars that are looking to line things up here. Shorter pit stops from Brady Myers and Madison Down, but they would have been fuel saving. Absolutely, they would have been fuel saving. Do they go for a crack here at Ethan Greek Gold? Because if they make a mistake here, they are at risk of losing Jared Philsell, and Philsell disappears off in the distance. That one's done. Marcelo Rivera, got to think about. Brenton Hobson into the lane. Teo Serrano. Well, pit crews, time to get out there and get something done. That lane is about to come very busy.
I think it's going to be hard for Greek Gold to hold off Myers because obviously the tyre difference. Myers is looking a little bit racy here. just wonder he's not close enough, obviously, at this point of the race. But I thought about maybe a move up the inside. You can see just how much he gains just through that mid-corner. So, yeah, if I was Myers and down, I'd be wanting to get the job done on Ethan. But, you know, it's just so tricky to see how this is going to play out. Also, I'd love to know when these teams are going to dart off into pit lane.
Yeah, it's, are you going to do it? Am I going to do it? Are you going to do it? Am I going to do it? It's just... Everyone's sort of sitting on tank to hooks as we're coming through the field this time by. It'll be 21 laps left in this race. So 21 by 4.32 is 90 Ks left of motor racing. We'll have at conclusion of this lap as they come to the last corner. James Scott has already got 90 kilometres worth of racing action left. Now the rest of the field start to chase him down. What does Phil Sell's times look like? Well, just about matched. He's not taking much time out of teammate James Scott up ahead. And that's the difference that starting further up the field really has. James Scott's had a pretty easy race by all stretch of the imagination. I mean, he's had Phil Sell sitting with him for that entire first stint, but other than that, he hasn't had to do too much fighting. That's the difference between him and Phil Sell here tonight.
Check out the OG Gear replay. Let's see what's going on here. Looks all pretty tight. Oh, another pinched brake. Oh, Berkey's he's just got the left side into the gravel. Unfortunately, he's given up those spots. But again, that's that braking zone that we touched on earlier. It's so easy just to lock a brake there and run wide.
Yep, and it is. And Griffin Gardner and Bo Elwood have been locked together just about the entire race as well, and they'll continue to do so. Albeit Bo Albert's got a little bit more fuel to add at the end of the stop. So it will be longer through the lane. Flock's now in. Brady Baldwin, self-proclaimed. I love the way he talks about himself. He's not got a lot of confidence as Bradley Baldwin. I don't think he expected to make this series. He calls himself the biggest wobbler in sim racing. At least he's having fun with it.
Hey, he can't be that much of a wobbler. He's actually in the series, so there's a lot of people like myself that wouldn't even be able to make the cut. So I don't know about being that much of a wobbler. He's not doing too bad if he's made the cut to be part of the Logitech series.
Actually chatted to his spotter. His spotter actually does photos for the series, by the way, David Mulqueen. And Mulqueen expects that he's going to get a big round of applause, big pat on the back, because it was not easy getting Brady in, and he thinks it was all him. So argued between those two guys about who got in the series for you.
So Marcelo's in the lane. Oh, Albert. So a couple of these drivers now just ticking off that last box, 20 laps to go. And this is where we start to see the shuffle. This is where we start to see these different strategies play out as far as who's stationary in a lane. And that's the part that I can't wait for, is that when everyone's got that final stop out of the way, who's got what towards the end of the race and how can they go? Can some of these drivers hold off if they decide to pit now and look after those tyres as the race goes on in these dying stages?
I'll tell you what, I've just gone back and had a look at Gilliam's times. This is really, really critical, probably to about, I wouldn't say Phil Sell, but let's say to about Forza El Nabi. That's the sort of two comparisons that we sort of be looking at, because we expect him to pop out about there. It's not great. He's not making up a huge chunk of time in terms of things. To Madison down in 5th spot, a little bit further up in terms of that pack. Yeah, he's not really making a huge boatload of time. So I think Gilliam's probably going to slot in back about 15th spot. It does not look great for Andrew Gilliam in terms of how that pit lane strategy. He had to do something different. He was turning those fronts off, had to try something. It's not worked.
Yeah, we'll see. What's that? 29 in Maloney's in. So, yeah, and good on him for rolling the dice too, because what's the point of just doing what everyone else does? You know, you just don't know how this race is going to play out. And see, Rick Kazekstov, he's in the lane too. So now we're starting to see strategy. A lot of cars just firing to pit lane now. This is where the race gets interesting, because they're getting this last lot of fuel in on board, and it's really going to shuffle up the field.
Yeah, no one caught speeding on the pit lane entry sign, so everyone got that car woed up that time by. I can tell you there's more cars coming in the background as well, so just about everyone's sort of starting to file into the pit. So the lap number's being called. Everyone says it was lap 45 that you had to file into the pit lane. Well, these guys up the front are going to come in a couple laps later. Kuznetsov's in. That's a critical one. Maloney, Gardner, Adam Briggs is now in. This is where the movers and shakers start to get through things, and I think Ethan Greek-Galt's starting to range back up again, so he's found some time back. Maybe he was saving just a teeny tiny little bit for Ethan Greek-Galt, and Phil Sell's tyres start to hurt. Nearly cops a whack. And once. Nearly a Logitech-sized hole punched in the rear bumper as Holden Commodore goes toe-to-toe with Holden Commodore.
Well, is he struggling with his tyres? Is he just trying to save that little bit of fuel? Is he trying to look after his teammate James Scott in front? I don't know, but I didn't expect to see this on the back of Phil Cell.
Well, I just heard there was a little bit of a call on the radio of Phil Cell. He didn't quite say anything, but the mic opened up. And generally that's a sign he's coming to the lane. And guess what? He's into the lane all out of shape. On the way in, we saw it was Dylan O'Shea in the qualifying session that tagged the barriers. If you're going to take some risks, it's time to take them. The TTR cars barrel down the pit lane straight. They've got a lap to try and do what they can. They're going to get undercut by these cars, though, and that's the tricky part. When you're in TTR's shoes, you're trying to go long. They've gone that way every single time this season, but you're at risk of the undercut. What do the pit stop times start to look like for the drivers around them?
Well, they'll have their teammates and strategy players in TTR just looking at how long that these drivers that are in the lane, how long they're going to be stationary for, where they're going to come out on the racetrack, whether they know they're under pressure.
Phil Cell's rolling in the lane, so Greek Gold's jumped in by a significant margin, so we expected that to happen, but we expected it to be a little bit more for Greek Gold, and Phil Cell had an early pit stop. That's why it was rolling quicker than everyone else. Sean McNamara has jumped a long way up this field, hasn't pit stopped yet. Andrew Gilliam's actually brought his way back into this race, but remember, he's on older rubber, so it's going to ail, but he's out ahead of Phil Cell.
Yeah, he's come out in Phil Cell, so that's done himself really well. But like you said, he did pit that few laps earlier, so the tyre difference between those two is going to be crucial. And is he going to be able to hold on as this race goes on? But yeah, he didn't fall back probably as far as we expected him probably go back a little bit further than he did. So I think he's done a decent job at the moment.
Well, I tell you what, Dylan Rudd has fallen in behind Marcelo Rivera. Marcelo Rivera will be going, oh, thank God for that. I'm sick of looking at the rear end of that car. So he's now got ahead of him. Rivera is now the car in behind Phil Cell. Kuznetsov is right in behind him, and they pitted one lap apart as well. Now trying to go down the inside,
Beautiful.
Gets the job done, and that's on Sean McNamara. And here come the TTR cars to the lane. Myers is in, Down is in. And remember, James Scott kicks on at the front end of this field because why not? He's got the margin, he's got them all in hand. He doesn't need to worry about them. So he's playing it cool, just waiting for them, then he'll respond. Dylan O'Shea, expecting him probably to the lane either this lap or next lap. It's going to be this lap for the 19 car from 9.5. And guess what? Team boss in behind him. Sean McNamara peels out of that left-hand side of that shot. Files on in as well. So now, this is the crunch time. This is the critical lap. Where do they all pop out relative to each other? Who's been showing pace? Who's been showing fuel saving? And I reckon the TTR cars are not even going to come out attached to the rear bumper of the 201 machine of Gilliam. Where does Kuznetsov and Rivera feed in turn of this? Rivera's gone through and Madison down. So does Kuznetsov. So they've both got that position. And I tell you what, one lap worth to undercut has Madison down, gone one lap too late. Brady Myers is in the background. No, Brady Myers is actually up ahead of them. So it wasn't a great entry from Madison down. It's not gone well for him.
One that's played out nicely for is Ethan, because now he's got that fresher tyre. Oh, big sideways there for Down. He was really sideways into that corner, but Ethan Gold has opened up that margin on Jared Philsol, so that's worked out nicely for him. And at the moment, he's got that fresh tyre advantage over James Scott. So now it's going to play out the difference between these two. We know that James Scott probably wasn't stationary as long as Ethan Gold. So I'm curious to see when Scott comes in the lane. He doesn't want to leave it too long because he knows that Ethan's got that fresh rubber.
Yeah, so we can wait a little while, but it can't be a lot. It's maybe 2 laps in terms of things. Ando stayed out. Josh Ando Anderson stayed out that extra lap. He's now going to come to the lane. So he's going to be undercut now by a whole bunch of these drivers. It'll be interesting to see where it all happens. But Gilliam's going to be a cork in the bottle here, and that's going to be critical. How quickly can Brady Myers clear him, if at all? Gilliam's going to be so slow here, so Myers is going to get this done as quickly as possible. Phil Cell's gone.
Ooh. Just checking out the last lap times too. So leader James Scott, last lap was a 29.9. Rick Gold 29.4. So slowly, but just as I say that, Jared Philsell's done a 29.2. So these guys obviously making the most of this fresh tyres now. But man, oh man, it's going to get interesting if there's a laps die away now.
Just starting to think, how much does Andrew Gilliam defend this? Remember, won that race back at Detroit Bel Air last year. Was feeling on top of the world. Thought there was an opportunity to show things. A new outfit in 2024. A new team. How's that all working out for him? Well, he's found some pace. He's found some speed. it's turning out all okay. Marcelo Rivera's in a great spot.
Ooh.
The second of the ERT cars, and now finally James Scott's going to peel on the lane. That is going to cleanse the field in terms of that strategy now.
This is what we've been waiting for, just to see how it all plays out. Ethan Grigolt's got that 40-second margin, but this is where it all takes place. James Scott's still got to trundle into his pit stop. He's got to be stationary, and we go to the split screen and we can see exactly where Ethan Grigolt is. Look at the margin that he's starting to pull out on Jared Philsell too. Very tidy looking race car at this stage with the fresher tyres. We can see in the top, James Scott still stationary. He's still up on the jacks. Coming into the second last corner for Ethan Grigolt. It's really going to be a drag race into that final corner. Who's going to get it?
Yeah, now he comes off the last corner. Now it's the run down to the start-finish line, but James Scott's going to have him covered by a mile in terms of things. Probably going to be about 4 seconds when they pop out. Should be somewhere around that. 3.5, somewhere in that range as it turns out. As they start to cleanse, the time is going to take a little while to update, as it always does post-pit stop. But 3.1 seconds for Ethan Grigolt, so he's pulled some time back out. But that will be just about how the way that they finish, I think, in about 15 laps time. So it's going to be James Scott for Speed Cafe, Lodz Esports, Ethan Grigolt for Evolution Racing Team, and Jared Philsell. Speed Cafe, Lodz Esports, the first of the TTR cars, Trans-Tasman Racing for Brady Myers, Gilliam in the first of the Vermilion Simsport cars. And again, there's just so many teams up and amongst here. Marcelo Rivera's having a standout performance. This is a phenomenal drive from Rivera. He'd be very, very happy with this.
Absolutely, and that's what we love to see, a little bit of a mix-up. You don't want those stale drivers that are just winning the same race and the same top three all the time. It's good when teams mix it up a little bit of strategy comes into it, and I love just when we go to different racetracks that work into some drivers' favour too. That's really good. So still plenty to play out here with these couple of positions here, but the field's not set. We've still got another 14 laps to go, but man, James Scott really hasn't put a foot wrong all night, has he? He's been pretty strong, and we touched on it. He had a good lead up to this race, won a race coming into tonight, and obviously very comfortable with the car. And you can never discount Jared Philsell. He's had an amazing march through the field. I don't think he can state that tonight was a boring race. He's passed his fair share of cars tonight, and on for a podium at this stage.
I think Jared Philsell look back at this one and go, man, I wish I could take qualifying back to that again, as Josh Anderson sets the fastest lap of the race, nearly cracks into the 28s, 29.008, 8 thousandths of a second away from cracking into the 28s in terms of things. So Ando's having a reasonable night. Have a look at Dylan Rudd though, and look at where he's popped out post this. He's been sitting about third most of this race. All of a sudden, pit stop cycle plays itself out. He's 10th.
Yeah, it's the old swings and roundabouts, isn't it? It's everyone wants that crystal ball. You want to know how the race is going to play out and what the best strategy is, and sometimes you just got to wing it, and it'll either go right for you or wrong for you, and unfortunately he just hasn't been able to capitalise on holding on to those positions.
I tell you, if you've got a crystal ball, I've run a few races this week and strategy's not gone my way. Can you stop holding that? Can you mail it over to me for just a week? Just a week, that's all I want.
I usually have to give it back to Jay Kennedy after these broadcasts, just so we can save it for the next round.
Mate, can you split it up? Do you think there's probably 2 magic 8 balls out of the one crystal ball? Can we maybe share it around from time to time? In terms of things, I reckon it'd be real interesting to have a look at what the championship, because remember we were saying Rudd would have it by about 30 points, but that was when he was sitting third on the road, fourth on the road or so. Things would have changed massively. 4 points, and Kuznetsov is still on a charge, and Dylan Rudd's probably, there's not much he can really do. It's going to take something pretty major for him to move, whereas Kuznetsov's got the opportunity to potentially move forward. But remember, the car in behind him is Josh Anderson, and Ando's got 3 laps, fresher tyres. Well, we were talking about it early on in the piece. There was a couple of drivers in the field that might be close to the incident point limit. One of them's finally hit it. It's the 111 machine. My apologies, we've actually got 2 nearly at the same time. So Taro Storono, and then the 222 car of Jacob O'Reilly. So both from the same outfit, by the way, Vermilion Simsports.
Yeah, we touched on that earlier, that really is something that you've got to be mindful of, because of how long this race is, 64 laps, and it's so easy to get off tracks. It doesn't take much, just at the corner we're here now, just to run that little bit wide in. If you run too far wide, it's easy just to get an off track, and half the time it's not even at an advantage to run that wide, but unfortunately there's track limits, and that's what will pin you.
Veld's had a reasonable night at the office. He would have been counting his lucky stars all the way back at Sebring, finish on the podium. Now at the moment he's having a ding-dong battle with Sean McNamara in the 951 machine. And Veldy, he has got one lap older tyres than Sean McNamara ahead of him. Jake Burton's in behind these guys. I said Burton said to me earlier in the week, this is going to be a shocker. Don't keep your eyes on me. I'm not interested in being on camera. I've got no practice. I've got no time this week. There's nothing I can do about this one. That's just the way it plays out. So he tried to bank up some practice in advance. But it's been a fair while since he's been able to dedicate time to the sim. And, well, after winning the round at Phillip Island, he sits 25th. So, yeah, that about represents that amount of time at the office.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but, you know, sometimes real-life commitments get in the way and you don't get as much time to commit as what you'd like. But and that just goes to show how important seat time is in these things. You know, regardless of what you're doing, just to be able to knock off laps and work on little things with setup and maybe racing in other series, racing in some official races, just so you can get that seat time. That's crucial, and that's just to show you know, obviously he's no slouch when he's on it, but unfortunately when you don't get enough time throughout the week, unfortunately it does show.
It's a business you've got to put a fair bit of work into. Talk to any sim racer and they'll tell you, compared to the real world stuff, one of the guys that does the real world stuff is Ethan Griegold. I've been told of a few battles he's had in that Hyundai Excel, by the way, at Winton probably about a month ago. And Jake Burton spoke very, very highly of him and the madness and how skilled he is in terms of an Excel and driving. And that side of things, you don't get a lot of track time, you don't get a lot of prep time. Sim, you get as much as you want. You want to be running laps for 5 hours every evening, every night of the week? You can absolutely do that. That is everything that's available to you. And there are drivers in the field that will put that amount of prep in. I think Max Verstappen said he puts 50 hours worth of prep into 24-hour races. Yep, you can put as much as you want in.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's the beauty of esports, isn't it? When you don't have to worry about how much it's going to cost to do a track day, or how much you're going to use up on your equipment and all the rest of it. So, but it is interesting that it just proves that you just can't automatically throw yourself in a seat and go fast. As we see a move up the inside, that's Anderson. Gets the job done. So he's pacey. We've talked about it. He's got the fastest lap of the race so far. He's got that decent set of tyres, and now he's looking the charge. So the next one on his list is his teammate in Madison Down, and I wouldn't put it past him to get the job done with 10 laps to go.
I'll tell you what, Dylan Rudd is a big Anderson fan at the moment, because that's another couple of points that Rudd will put over Rick Kuznetsov, so he'll be quite happy with that one. I was very, very interested if we might see a tie on points as we exited here tonight, and Kuznetsov not quite able to stay a little bit further ahead. And a number of drivers now saying that, a number of people out in YouTube land saying they've seen Ethan Griegold in a Hyundai Excel. It was awesome to watch. Bathurst, by the way. So, there's drivers up and down the field. Madison Down, by the way, had his first ever race start in real world racing over the weekend at Winter Motor Raceway. And he was very, very nervous on the run down to turn number 1. Never done a race start before, and he was fretting like you wouldn't believe. It's a little bit different when you've got to pay for the damage if something goes wrong, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a bit different when where you just if you have an accident in one of these things, you just hit the old magic reset button, and it's all good as gold. But it's a different kettle of fish when you're in the seat and you're paying the bills. But very, very jealous myself hearing about all these drivers that get real world racing experience, and it's a blessing to be part of, because it's where it's been given these drivers opportunities to do stuff that they normally wouldn't do. We touched on the fact that Madison Down has driven supercars. He's been actually having to have test days with Brad Jones Racing. I mean, how cool is that to have that opportunity as part of sim racing, that he's been granted that?
Yeah, and I tell you what, I was standing in the pit lane as he come in for his pit stop. He had a power steering pump fail on both days of the event. And I was standing there when he rolled into pit lane after 7 laps, and he was going purple in the face. That's how hard he was trying to get the car around corners. As Hayden Veld tries very hard to get down the inside of Sean McNamara. They're going to be toe-to-toe when they come out the other side as well. and it's not over as it currently stands. Gamble and Burton were going toe-to-toe. There might be something open up when they get down to turn 4. They're going to crest the hill down here. Veld is giving McNamara no room on the outside as he tried to open the corner up. They get to the inside. It's shorter on the inside, but it's very difficult to get the power down. The rear tyres of Hayden Veld's Commodore are currently screaming, and with Sean McNamara to his inside, pinches him off, covers him off a little bit. He's got to get the car tipped in, and now Jake Burton wants to try and barge in. They've nearly made contact there. Here comes Burton to the inside now. So what was an overtake for Hayden Veld all the way back at turn 3 might be a position lost. He was out in the marbles as they come through the corner right there. Then it's off of 8. On the run now down to turn 9, and now here comes Scott Gamble, who's sniffing in and amongst things as well. So Gamble gets to the inside. Hayden Veld went for an overtake, and it's Jake Burton who's the only one who loses a spot.
Oh, he's thinking about to move up the inside though. The crossover, he's got the job done, giving each other the room. But man, oh man, how good's this side-by-side racing?
And he's still there. Jake Burton's still going to try and hang on. The draft's to the left-hand side of the road. So Gamble's nearly clear. Is he going to get far enough up? Oh, it's close for Jake Burton. And he turned the wheel a little bit aggressively, reckoned he wasn't quite far up enough. And now he's going to have to back out of that one. And boy, that opened up. And I tell you what, we're under 10 to go. That's why it's all opened up.
The flash of the lights for Burton as well. I don't know if he was too impressed about it, but it looked like pretty good, hard, clean racing there. Tried to make the move, but unfortunately got the move done on him. So, yeah, that was an interesting half lap.
I tell you, this is for everyone that's watching along. It's an interesting one in terms of things, but what you've got to do with the car is at the point of turn in, you have to get your headlights level with the front edge of the rear wheel arch, and it's at the regular point of turn in, not at the point of turn in if you're racing someone. That's what the stewards are looking for, and I don't think Jake Burton quite got there, which is why he had to sort of turn out of that one. I think he would have been up 30 centimetres shy of it if he was. Not much in it. Oh.
Yes. Good racing, and isn't it funny that, look, we say it each week, it doesn't matter, you're not racing for first, second, third, regardless of where you are on the grid, everyone puts on a show and they want to battle for every position they can get. Doesn't matter if you're racing for 3rd or 30th, they all race as hard as they can to grab the best position they can.
Now, this is an interesting battle because Rivera's trying to catch up to Andrew Gilliam and try and get his way on by. This is for the last spot inside the top 5. Brady Myers, by the way, starting to come back at Jared Philsell. Philsell starting to take little bits of time out of Ethan Grieg-Gold. So that one's not done. It's going to take something massive. He's got to probably take another second out of him. Then he'll pick up the toe and start really clawing time back. So not over at the pointy end of things. I mean, James Scott's it's over and done with. Oh, to the inside. Dylan O'Shea gets a little bit of a touch at the apex from Tom Freer and loses the spot.
She's into that braking zone too. It's almost a bit of achy breaky heart going through there, isn't it? When you try and your absolute best, you try not to have it lock up, but man, there's been a couple of positions changed through that corner, and just trying his best to hold on here. But lucky they're all still on the black stuff. That's the main thing.
For now, gee, don't say that, Sandman.
You said for now, not me.
Where's some wood? I need to touch some wood at this point in time. Because it's not over yet. I get Rivera would love a top 5 here. He would absolutely love a top 5. And remember what we said about Andrew Gilliam? We thought, oh, he's probably going to fall back down through the Packers. O'Shea still battling on with Freer, so that one's not solved either. Now O'Shea's forced to run wide, which is going to give the opportunity to the 28 machine. It's not done. It's absolutely not done.
Oh, which way do you go?
He's made contact. They're locked together, and they'll both bowl alive when they get down here to turn 3. O'Shea says, thanks, boys.
He was wrapped. He saw that and thought, you little beauty, I've been gifted.
And the other problem now is that Blake Warboys is right on the rear bumper of Tom Freer. So not only has Freer lost 2 spots, he might be about to lose a 3rd. He's got this one sort of locked up as it currently stands. Gee, Richard Hampstead. If I was in Hampstead's shoes, I might think about redressing it. I just might think about redressing it. He's definitely going to be at fault.
Yeah, it's tricky because you can see that he was really covering Hammer there, but yeah, Hammer locked a brake and there was that little bit of contact. Yeah, again, thank goodness I'm in the commentary box.
And now Tom Free is going to be vulnerable to Warboys, and Warboys would have thought, well, that's probably all the racing will get done tonight. Now he's presented with another opportunity down at turn 9. And still going to have to sit by there, and Brenton Hobson's the car in the background. As this three-way stoush for 20th position, last spot inside the top 20. Warboys wants to show the nose, let Tom Freer know it is trying to create some pressure at the moment. But it's about drive off of turn 1. Hobson didn't get good drive off of turn 1. The Vermilion Sim Sports car in the background's Jacob O'Reilly. He's 41st, he's a lap down, he's not a part of this one. So wipe him out.
Oh, trying to move around the outside. That's the hardest part to go there. But, leaves yourself open up the inside. Oh, a little bit of nose to tail. But look at the marbles too. We didn't touch on that throughout much of the race, but there's a lot of marbles on the exit of that racetrack too. So really got to be careful that you don't bowl yourself wide too much, because you get that pickup on your tyres, and that'll hurt you for the next corner or so.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, I think our margin back up the front of the field between Greg Galt and Phil Sell's actually coming down still. Yeah, it is. It was 0.2 of a second they took out of him the last time by, so that one's not done. 5 to go at the line. 5 laps to go. 20 kilometres worth of racing action. James Scott from Ethan Greg Galt, from Jared Philsell, from Brady Myers. And Brady Myers is starting to close in as it currently stands. Phil Sell, I get the feeling Phil Sell wants this 5th spot. Like, he's driven a brilliant motor race. I don't doubt that he knows he's quick enough to be inside that top 5. He just wants to chalk it off, as to the guys at the end of the field as well. Cast your mind back all the way back to lap 1 and how dicey that was to survive.
It's always heart and mouth stuff, isn't it? But yeah, there was a fair bit of action in the opening, and everyone's got himself to a point now where they pretty much got what they've got. You don't want to throw away everything that you've worked so hard for throughout the night. Regardless of whether your night's going to plan or not, you just need to capitalise. And it's not something that we've spoke about. It's really early in the season, but it starts to play on people's minds as the rounds go on. That it's crucial to stay inside that top 20 of the points, because obviously that plays a big roll-on effect on how your season will play out next year, because you're almost gifted a guaranteed start if you finish inside the top 20. So obviously that's not big on their minds in the first couple of rounds, but as we start to get in, like you touched on at the start of the broadcast, we're a third of the way through the championship. So now if you're starting to have pretty ordinary races each and every week, you need to start thinking about making the most of whatever positions you can get and stay in touch with that top 20.
Well, come to the start-finish line, it'll be 4 more laps left to run. We are running out of time, and the opportunities for Marcelo Rivera to get on by are running out. 5-second penalty, by the way, just come through from the stewards. We're sort of expecting this one. Car 28, which is Richard Hampstead for the contact with Tom Freer. Pretty much a slam dunk on that one.
To go to the OG gear replay, we're going to go on board with Hammer. He goes to make a move up the inside. A little bit of a block there. Oh, and it's just that nose to tail. And we saw from the live actions that, yeah, both guys had the tyres locked up. Look at the marbles that I touched on. That's unreal. But unfortunately, that nose to tail contact has given him that 5-second penalty.
Yeah, I don't think it's, I think it was pretty much slam dunk as soon as he got in the back there. And anyway, back up front end of things. Oh, Phil Sell's getting close. He's just over a second back, by the way. He's just over a second back, which means that draft, it's about to kick in. Green Gold's ailing. He's taken 0.2 of a second out of him on the last lap. I think he's going to take more out of him on this lap. It's down. It's coming down. It's got to be, I reckon it's about 1.2 seconds right now, but it's trimming itself out. So Jared Philsell might be on his way to chalking up the first 1-2 of the season for any of the teams up and down pit lane. It's not been easy. Is this an opportunity? Is Ethan Green-Gold going to ail at the last? Brady Baldwin's a lap car. He's in the way, so he's going to have to step wide of these guys. Runs it wide at turn 1. And there's now only 3 laps left to run. There's 12 kilometres halfway through this lap. Final 10Ks of the motor race. And it was drifting apart. It all sort of stagnated, and now it's coming back together.
Yeah, I wonder if Ethan's just maybe looking after his gear with a couple of laps to go. He knows he's not going to catch James Scott. He's in a different postcode at this stage. So the point where he's at is like, you know what, if I just look after it and just sort of manage that gap between himself and Jared, that's probably what he's trying to do.
Is he low on fuel? Did he underfill that car just a little bit too much? Did they not put enough fuel in that car? On the front straight between the first sector, he's lost 0.2 of a second to Phil Cell.
Oh,
So
I
overtaken the
don't
background. And it's Madison down, gets the inside of Marcelo Rivera. Rivera's in deep there, and you can see Gilliam's backing these guys up, gets the drive off. And that was the key fight to that one.
Yeah, well, interesting. I mean, all eyes are going to be on Ethan Grigalt now. That gap is now under a second now. So the pressure is starting to mount. Obviously, we're going to start to get to the line with 2 laps to go. I guess Ethan knows what he's got. He'll be mindful that he's actually got a little bit of a draft of the car in front of him too, so that's going to help him a little bit too. But he's now he'll be just keeping an eye on his mirror too. I guess if he's short on fuel, he'll stay behind the car in front just to capitalise on what he can. But yeah, you'd like to think that he hasn't gone and sold himself short on fuel here at this stage.
Brady Boardman just did the time-honoured respect symbol on the brakes. He flashed the brake pedal a couple of times just to tell the cars behind, hey, I recognise I'm a lap car in this situation. I'm going to let you all on by. So he sidesteps this entire group. Well done, Boardman. Gets out of the way. Now, what have they got? Grigalt, oh my God, he's so much closer. Phil Cell is so much closer right now. I reckon, did I just hear him press on the clutch? Oh, I think I just heard him fuel saving. So he's in the pot. He's in trouble. In terms of Grigalt, 0.6 of a second are going to cover these top 2. There will be one more lap to go. 4.3 Ks. Right now, it's out about 7 kilometres worth of this racetrack. And Ethan Grigalt has run a phenomenal race to this point. Now he's in trouble.
Oh, I'm too scared to speak. I don't know how this is going to play out. Hopefully, he hasn't put himself in a position where he's going to be short on fuel. He's done an outstanding race all day. For the first half of this race, it was himself and James Scott. There was nothing between them. They were just running their own race. So we can see the white flags out. James Scott, our leader. Now we've got Ethan Grigalt second, Jared Philcell third. Is there going to be enough fuel in the tank for him to get home? Has he done enough? Oh my goodness, it's coming down to the last lap.
Oh boy, imagine if he runs out. It's still quite a run to the line. Well, now it's gone a little bit tighter as they try and get the drive up and over the sausage curves. They're under 4 kilometres left to run. They get to turn 3. There'll be 3 Ks left to run in this one. And he's coming. As Philcell left it a little bit too late to go for the charge. He's closing the whole way into the braking zone. They crest the hill. One opportunity ticked off on the lap. Is there going to be another? Philcell's just got supreme pace, but he's running out of racetrack. If there was one more lap, you'd say almost for certain Jared Philcell was going to finish second. Ethan Grigalt pulls it up at turn 4. That's another opportunity gone out of the lap. I just don't think he's close enough. He's pulled time out of him in every sector of the lap thus far. Still continues to gain ground. James Scott's going to win it by a country mile, but what's going to happen to second?
Yeah, I think he's done enough. I think he'll be able to hold him off as long as he's got enough in the tank. They're just coming to the final few corners. Like you said, James Scott in a different postcode. He's done an absolutely brilliant race tonight. Everything that he did was perfect, spot on, and even opened up that margin. But it's going to be hold your breath stuff coming into the final couple of corners. As out of the last corner, James Scott will take the checkered flag for round number 3 here at the Red Bull Ring.
Yeah, phenomenal performance from the 088. Philcell's not going to get there. Ethan Grigalt has had a car that hasn't made it to the line at Phillip Island, a car that crawled its way to the line at Sebring, finishes on the podium at round number 3 at the Red Bull Ring. I tell you what, I love the drive from Andrew Gilliam. Fell off like a rock in that first stint. Guess what? Still home inside the top 5. He will be happy with that one. Rivera lost the spot. Madison down late on the piece, comes home 7th as they start to trundle through. And this battle for 20th spot has not gone away either. Warboys is now banked up behind Brenton Hobson. Freya recovered, pushed out a little bit ahead. Hobson's gone ahead and nicked the spot. So 20th spot's going to go to Tom Freya. Brenton Hobson, Blake Warboys. Something's happened. Warboys was actually ahead of Hobson. Sorry, my apologies on this lap. 19th spot for Tom Freya. There was another car ahead of these guys that fell off. It might have been Hayden Veld, actually, that fell through. And something's happened to Jake Maloney on the last lap.
He was asking a bit much of those tyres, I think, to try and pull that move off. Unfortunately, went a little bit deep.
It's, got survived out the other side. The bull in the center of the track. It's iconic about this motor race, and what's iconic is about the Lobs Esports car. Last year it was Phil Sell. This year James Scott finishes on top of the podium. That was just a comfortable drive. He never looked at any stage like he was going to be challenged by anyone around him. Greg Gold put the torch to him early on and then nearly lost second in the dying stages of that race from Jared Phil. So what a drive through the field. And that's the second time this year he's done it, by the way. 17th to 3rd and finished second last time out at Phillip Island as well. Brady Myers will come home in 4th. Andrew Gilliam 5th. Inside of 10 seconds to leaders. Madison down from Marcelo Rivera. Josh Anderson picked off some spots late on the piece. And the championship hopefuls, Rick Kuznetsov and Dylan Rudd, round out your top 10. Rick Kuznetsov happy with that race. And look at Dylan Rudd, 5 seconds off of that pack. In the end, he ran 3rd for so long through that race, Sam, man.
Yeah, amazing race, and so much played out. And like you said, the prep that James Scott had coming into tonight, I guess everyone was pretty much a passenger as far as just watching him run away with this race. He did everything right. He didn't put his foot wrong, and his strategy was ace. And yeah, so many movers and shakers throughout the field. And yeah, I don't think we're going to hear too many complaints as far as Jared's races. I don't think it's going to be too boring for him. I think he probably would have enjoyed just making his way through the field. 17th to 3rd, pretty impressive.
Yeah, you'll take that and have a look at their lineup outside. Boabet started 10th, finishes 14th. Yeah, reasonable night at the office. Jordan Ross, well, he was on the podium here last year. We talked about that a bunch and didn't play out that way for him this time out. Adam Briggs was in behind him as well in Synergy Sim Racing for 14th, 15th, 16th. Sorry, 15th, 16th, 17th. Outside your 20 now, Blake Warboys was the first of those cars outside the 20. Richard Hampstead will have a 5-second penalty applied to him post-race, which won't affect his final finishing position. In terms of things, he finished far enough ahead of Hayden Veld for that one to hold off. Sean McNamara will be next up. Jake Burton from Scott Gamble, Robbie Gibbs, Kurt Stenberg, Ian Ford, and Zach Rattray White round out your 30. Outside the 30s, though, Sebastian Flock from Thomas Freeman, Luke Rosella, another bad night at the office, but it's the first race he's finished, so at least there was that. Andre Youssef from Michael Whiting, Brian Borg, Matt Bowler, Brady Baldwin, Teo Serrano, and Damian Johnson. Bowler on downwards, finishing off of the lead lap. And there was only one non-finisher here tonight from Connor Nixon, and apparently there's one more original gaming gear replay, and it's the battle on for this 20th spot that was so hotly contested. Inside's Freer, Blake Warboys, and then Hobson. And that's Richard Hampstead trying to get down the inside, and Hampstead finished a mile back off these guys. There's something in this.
Don't forget Hammer had that penalty that he had to serve as well. Oh, did everyone get through? It's heart and mouth stuff. Everyone's giving each other an inch, though. Good racing, though. Look at them. Just giving each other just enough room. Oh, it's getting close.
The thing is, when you look at that, if you give the other driver an inch, you're a racing car driver. You give him 2, get out of the field. You can't give them 2 inches.
That's it.
So, anyway, that's how they all finished up. That was a good race. I enjoyed that here tonight.
Yeah, again, the Red Bull Ring didn't disappoint.
Well, we're going to take a chat to the post-race podium. We're going to start from the bottom end and work our way up. It's going to be the driver of the 94 that we'll start to chat to first. Jared Philsell, you thought at the top of the show, qualifying, you went in there, you're probably feeling quite comfortable. You just never quite got that lap together in terms of things. 17th, not the starting point you wanted, but finished on the podium. So, hey, you overtook a bunch of cars.
Yeah, qualifying. I'll just forget about that. Let's be honest, that was crap. Not ideal. Nothing like pressure or anything like that. It just struggled to really follow the car, to be honest. And you obviously needed the draft to be somewhat competitive up the field. So if unfortunately, we'll just forget about qualifying. Race was better though.
Look, I'm going to say the opposite. Normally I'm quite good in qualifying and terrible in the race, so at least you're able to go the other way around, mate. Difficult night. Cutting your way through the field around here is sometimes not all that easy. We were commenting at points throughout that stream, though. It looked like you guys were just running that rear wing just a little bit more trimmed out than the pack. It seemed like you were able to get the job done in a straight line. Yeah, it's works great for passing and good for defense as well. So I'm surprised a lot more cars were running the high downforce package. But yeah, so not sure.
well, I honestly thought there was going to be a lot more, but no, it was it made our job a little bit easier with the draft train and getting a little bit more straight line speed than the others.
Mate, in terms of things as well, you seem like you're starting to become a little bit of a tyre whisperer. Tail end of the stints, you just had the best pace of the field, hands down, covered everyone off in terms of things. What do you think it is that makes it? Because there's nothing in it at this level. Is it an extra 2% with the throttle control? There's really nothing. You've got to have that ultimate in terms of you've got to go digging through the finite little bits and pieces of that data. What do you think it is from your point?
We've got our secrets. Yeah, this tyre is very heat sensitive, so if you slide it or lock up or anything, it's pretty crap. So obviously keeping the heat out of it is crucial. So yeah, I didn't quite do a good enough job at the end of the middle stint there. I was good, and then the things just fell off a cliff because I had one slide. So then I didn't do quite a good enough job at the start of the third stint when I was trying to hunt down Ethan. I just went the wrong way with anti-roll bars, and yeah, didn't really help. But once I put them back to where they were meant to be, the thing was a jet, and I was slowly chipping away at him. But I'm sure it looks good on the broadcast.
Mate, for certainly an exciting couple of last laps of the race, mate. It's been a pleasure talking to you thus far throughout the season. Who are the sponsors that make it possible for the Speed Cafe Lobs Esports crew?
Yeah, obviously Speed Cafe for jumping on board. I love the look of the car. Myself and Dylan prefer the black with the green headlights, but the other guys prefer the white one. So that's an inter-team argument in itself. So no, it's great to have them on board, as well as Ryko Performance. If you need any setups for oval or anything for the road, they're a great setup shop. And we actually added a HRS sticker to the rear bar of our cars for this round, because unfortunately Luke Rosella had pedal failure. So Brett from HRS, he came in clutch and sent Luke a nice shiny Husingfeld sprint pedals. So thanks for Brett for that. Definitely saved Luke a little bit of pennies as well.
Yeah, Brett's been a big help to a number of sim races right throughout the years, mate. Congratulations on the result here tonight. Thank you very much for joining us as well, Jared. It's been a pleasure chatting to you once again.
Thank you.
And I believe, Stephen, you're sitting down there alongside Ethan Grieg-Galt, finishes outside of P2 tonight.
Absolutely, Ethan. Congratulations, mate. Great race. It was a little bit of heart and mouth for us in the commentary box in those final laps. We were a little bit concerned that you might have been tight on fuel. Was that the case?
I'm not too sure. It's the first time I've ever used a different fuel calculator. I was using Race Labs this time round, and it ran out just going through turn one on the in-lap, so it worked perfect. And yeah, I had no issues with it at all. It was good.
Good stuff. Your night was pretty good to walk away with a P2. Those opening laps, it was just you and James Scott just running away from the rest of the field. It looked pretty easy. It looked like you were quite content just to sort of stay on the back of him and see how the race played out. Is that the way it sort of was?
Yeah, to be honest, at the start of the race, I thought it was going to end up being more like it was last year, where we sort of had like a 10-car train at the front with everyone saving fuel and trying to jostle for position and that sort of stuff. But I think both me and James had a really good run through turn one, and I had a second back to P3 at the time, and I thought, oh yeah, well, it's got a bit of a gap, and I started saving a bit of fuel behind James, and then he just all of a sudden gunned it and dropped me a little bit. I thought, oh shit, I got to get my act together here, and yeah, it took me a while to get my feet there, but I managed to catch back up to him in the draft, and then it was sort of just a bit cruisy from there. But it all sort of came unstuck in the pit stop when I tried to drop off the jack at the same time as him. But the thing was a bit laggy, and it took a fair bit longer than I wanted to, and then I was pretty much out of tow, and that was it.
Well, you gave us a bit of a moment mid-broadcast too, because it looked like you were disappearing off the server there for a second. So we were holding our breath because we were quite enjoying seeing that Logitech G Commodore in P2, and we were just worried that you were going to drop out of the server. So you reckon that might have been about the time when you had that little bit of lag with the pit stop, possibly?
Yeah, well, it happened to me twice in practice tonight, but both times it came back. So I wasn't really too concerned. There was one stage there where it dropped for about 3 or 4 seconds. I thought, oh, here we go, I'm gone. But I sort of just focused on my mark. A lot of the times when that happens, it can distract you and you lose a lot of time. But I managed to lose no time to James in front and pretty much keep the car together. So shout out my ADSL for not being very good tonight, but it didn't affect the race results, so that's what counts.
Well, great job tonight. Brilliant to see you up there, mate. A job well done. Before we let you go, is there anyone you want to thank?
I'll just thank all the boys at ERT for a stellar week of work, pretty much yet again. And of course, our sponsors, Logitech G, for being one of the best sim racing sponsors a team can have. So thanks to all of them.
Congratulations, mate. Job well done. And we look forward to seeing you at Jerez for the next round.
Cheers, boys.
There you go, Scott. Job done by Ethan, holding on to P2, but now I believe you got the winner for the round, James Scott.
Yeah, driver the number 088 for Speed Cafe Lobs Esports again, mate. Interesting night at the office. We spoke to you. You said it was just about, look, I've just got to manage this thing. I've got to make sure I get to turn one. I've got to make sure I'm in the right spot. I've got to start ticking those boxes. And you did. You just ticked those boxes, ticked them. And then we just talked to Ethan. You said there was sort of a stage during that race there where all of a sudden you just took off and you said, all right, I'm going to take control of this thing. And, well, I think that was about the last the field saw you.
Yeah, I got obviously I got a good start, got away, and then it was a bit of a draft train for, a couple of laps, and then, I don't know who it was, someone was in P3 and made a little bit of a mistake, and then they had just a small battle, and then that just allowed front two to sort of break away, which was, it was lucky. Ethan held on really well there in the first stint, and then, I was just, in that second stint, the car was feeling, really good. Obviously got just a little bit of a jump in the pits as well, just to break the draft just enough that I could, pull out. I think it was, 6 or so seconds. I knew he had a little bit of fuel on me, but it was only probably like, I don't know, 2 seconds or something. So, just able to control it from there.
Were you happy up and down the field? Obviously, you guys are all working together and chatting to each other in terms of the sim racing capabilities, but it looked like your cars hung onto their tyres extremely well. Were you confident that sort of added a little bit of fire underneath things? Okay, we get a safety car here. If we need to stay out and not take an extra set of tyres, we can be comfortable doing that and feel like we've got the pace to pull away and control that race again.
Yeah, obviously the cars were, they were really hooked up. Probably in the first stint they weren't quite as good, but then, in the second and third stint they were, on rails. So, I was pretty confident. Obviously, if it was a safety car, the field, really compressed and the draft would have come back into effect. But, I don't know, I went a few more laps in that just before the last pit stop just to give me a few laps fresher tyres should there be a safety car or something like that. But, the car was good, and it would have been an interesting battle if it was a safety car, but glad there wasn't.
Mate, in terms of things, everything now in the rear view, you've got your eyes set. How many races is the target to win? Do you have any particular races that you're going, I want to win this one? This is the big one, because we saw the battle between 3 cars at Bathurst last year. James Scott, Brady Myers, Madison Down. That's always a big one, but is there any other one that sort of pops out and you go, that's my target, that's the one I want to win this year?
No, not really. Obviously Bathurst and, Sandown as well. And I think Interlagos, the 3 Enduros or something this year. Obviously they're the big ones, but every race that we go in, we obviously go in it to win it. So, just take, every race as it comes and try and put your best foot forward. Obviously a long way back in the championship after round 1, but sort of that's on the back burner. We'll just, take it each race as it comes, try and score as many points and see what we can do come the end of the season.
Mate, in terms of things now, we turn our eyes to Jerez, difficult circuit. That's going to be a tyre burner. I get the feeling, I think lap 1 over there with 111 litres worth of fuel in the tank is going to be very, very difficult. How's the prep work been? Have you started looking forward at that race thus far?
No, I haven't looked at that. Don't look too much further forward than the race that we've got in our hands at the moment. But, obviously I'll take a break, then, sort of get hooked into some laps there. Obviously, it's a fairly new track on iRacing, so, if people have raced there probably only once or twice. So, we'll put in some good effort. The guys at the team are working really well together. Obviously, all the guys that don't race in the series, Shane, Brody, Anton, all these guys, they don't race, but they turn up, do laps during the week, help out with the setup, and, strategy come race night. So the team's working really well together. And I'm sure we'll come up with something really good. Just keep the tyres on it. You'd probably be pretty good around there.
Mate, finally, floor's all yours yet again to thank the sponsors that make it possible. I guess in terms of things, Jared might have already done half the work for you, but hey, they go a big way to helping out the entire team.
Yeah, 100%, mate. Yeah, couldn't do it without them. So yeah, big thanks to Speed Cafe, Ryko Performance, Hybrid Racing Simulations, obviously all the guys at Lobs Esports, especially, you know, Brad, Anton, Shane, all these guys jumping in tonight, helping out with the setup. With the spotting, and Brody during the week with the setup as well. Really went a long way to what we're able to do tonight. And obviously you guys for the broadcast and the series admin guys as well.
Mate, thank you very much for joining us, being a part. Congratulations here. Ladies and gentlemen, your race 3 winner, 275 kilometers from the Red Bull Ring, goes to James Scott. Finally, we are going to take one quick look at the championship standings. As I said to you tonight, expect there to be some shuffling in terms of the championship standings. Well, Robbie Gibbs got his opportunity to lead the championship for 2 races. First time a Ford Mustang, by the way, Sandman, has ever led the Logitech Pro Invitational Championship. That one was a big old happy smile when we got that one pointed out to us about the Blue Oval. But Dylan Rudd has now put his stamp of authority on. It was a fall-off in that final stint. Rick Kuznetsov had an opportunity to lead that championship tonight. There's 8 points in it. There was 8 points coming in tonight. There's 8 points when we leave here. 2 different drivers, though.
Yeah, nice to see the Chevys back there. But yeah, and look, that thing's going to change so many times throughout the next round too when we head to Jerez. Like it was touched on, but James said that it's a new racetrack, and there's gonna be, you know, so many different things that'll play out of that racetrack, and it's really good when we go to a racetrack where there's people don't have a lot of data for. So I reckon that's going to be a level playing field and really going to be a cracker for the series.
Have a look at the guys that start to chase these guys down. Andrew Gilliam had another good finish here tonight, 4th spot in terms of that championship. Have a look a little bit further down the TTR cars. First, you got Jake Maloney sits in 5th. Madison down, Brady Myers, toe a line astern really in terms of the points, 400 points apiece. They're starting to come hunting, and that lead for Dylan Rudd over Madison down, now only 84 points. You have to put a good finish in for every race for the rest of the season. We just talked to him. James Scott, there he is, 376. Phil Sell, 4 points further back. Critically, have a look at that margin from James Scott to Madison down. That's 24 points, 28 points back to Phil Sell. That's how close it's going to be. This is going to come to a head of things. I reckon maybe not next round at Jerez, the round after, round number 5. I think we're going to have about 8 to 10 drivers, all nothing in it in terms of that championship standing. They're all going to be boxed in, and you're going to have to tune into this one next time out from Jerez. There's not a lot of data. These guys have been on this platform, on this car, on this service for such a long period of time, got a lot of data to work with. Now we head to a new track, something different, something to shake up the field. What does it look like when we get to the back end of May? Wednesday, the 22nd of May, 7:45 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. Circuit de Jerez, Angel Nieto, Sandman. It is a tricky track to get car balance right.
Absolutely can't wait for this one. This is a track that I do a little bit of offline driving around on. I get into an open wheeler, I get onto Jerez. I really enjoy this racetrack. So I haven't done laps around here in a supercar, which I think I'm going to do leading up to this one because I'm really looking forward to it. It'll be a cracker.
Well, might be a few bevs shared between you and I, Sandman, on the run into next round as we look at little bits of pieces around the track, a little bit of curbing, a little bit of everything. Ladies and gentlemen, say a big shout out to all the sponsors that make it possible here for the Logitech Pro Invitational. We want to say a big shout out to the Sport from Motorsport Australia. Obviously, our big primary sponsor, Logitech G, and of course tonight coming on board as well, the original Gamer Gear replay. It's been awesome to have them on board. They got their money's worth in those opening laps from the Red Bull Ring. We'll see you next time out, 22nd of May. Set your clocks, set your calendars now, and we'll see you from Circuit to Angel Nieto Jerez.
Baba, what are we playing?
Ya lo sabéis, it's Halo Day.
Yeah, one sec.
He's playing football, isn't he?
这家伙, you know he fancies himself a footballer.
Oh, whatever. Look, your love makes me strong, but your hate makes me invincible. All right, let's get on Halo then.
Let's go.
Ready.
Dale.
You went back this time, right? You got some
Chill, chaval. I won't ghost you this time.
I'm going hallway.
I got right.
Uno fuera.
Oh, another one down. Lock in. Next kill wins it.
Where is he? No lo veo.
Nisha, you hear that?
Quick on him, top left.
There. I'll push it. He's one shot.
Game over.
Got him.
Well played.
Same time tomorrow then.
We'll see.
Bye-bye.
Ciao. Nos vemos.
Weekend in, weekend out, Motorsport Australia officials are making waves. From waving flags, waving cars through pit lane, or responding to a wave for help. Wave hello to new lifelong friends. Who knows, you might just make waves around the world. Ride the first wave. Search Motorsport Australia officials today.